written by M.M. on Norton's chemical. Treatise, as the Nile with its overflowing waters floods the surround, Eng country, and covers it with fertilizing slime, bearing in it the promise of a rich and laughing harvest, so the genius of Norton overflows its banks far and wide, while he makes known to us the glorious works of nature. He spreads himself abroad over an immensity of space, that he may fertilize the fields of alchemy and rejoice the hearts of its husbandmen. If you are fortunate, you will catch beneath this wide expanse of waters a fish which will satisfy the longing of your heart. And if you fail of success, yet your mind will be stored with the precious treasures of knowledge, and you will in any case be richly rewarded for your labor. The treasures of Hermes are not laid open in one book. Perhaps one writer may render clear to you what another fails to explain. The treatise, Crede, Mihi, or Ordinal, of Thomas Norton, Preface, first, by the author himself. His book shews to the initiated knowledge, but cefies the ignorance of the vulgar. It is the book of honoring, increasing riches, and the book of the needy, putting to flight poverty. It is the book of confidence and truth, full of counsel for kings and of teaching for prelates. A book useful for sainted men, who wish to live unspotted of sin. A secret book, the book of the gift of God, to chosen men a pathway of true hope, a strength to those constant in firm faith, and who unwaveringly believe in my words. Alchemy is sought by the false and the true, by false seekers without number, but they are rejected. Many are aflame with the desire of gain, but amongst 1,000,000 scarce 3 are chosen. There are many called to knowledge, noble and poor, learned and ignorant, but they will not submit to toil or await the time. They do not attain to the goal because they are ungrateful. The book of our art is clear as light to the sons of knowledge, to whom God has freely given to understand this matter. Only let them believe this prophetical saying, to the thankful all flows forth from the fount of divine love. This noble science is bestowed only on those who love justice with a devout mind, but to the deceitful, the treacherous, and the violent it is denied, because their sins hinder the coming of God's gifts. This knowledge would often have been the glory of England's kings, if their hope had been firmly placed upon God. One who shall have obtained his honors by means of this art will mend old manners and change them for the better. When he comes, he will reform the kingdom, and by his goodness and virtue he will set an everlasting example to rulers. In his time, the common people will rejoice, and render praise to God in mutual neighborly love. O King, who art to accomplish all this, pray to God the King, and implore his aid in the matter. So the glory of thy mind will be crowned with the glory of a golden age, which shall not then be hoped for as future. Preface, second, to the honor of the one God, who is 3 persons in one, this book has been written, in order that, after my death, learned and unlearned men might see how everyone who will follow my good counsel and ponder it well before he begins the work may obtain great treasure through the art of alchemy. But the book is also a storehouse of mighty secrets for the learned. Let me warn the unlearned that they must study this art with fear and trembling, lest they be led astray by the false delusions of those who counsel many costly experiments and use high-sounding words. For my part, I desire none of that fame which the world can give, but only your prayers to God for me, though you need not utter my name. Let no one trouble himself about the author, but rather let him diligently consider the contents of the book. If you inquire into the motives of men, you will find many who are induced to give their minds to the study of alchemy, only by the desire of gain and riches, and such men are found even among cardinals of highest rank, archbishops and bishops of lofty order, abbots and religious priors, also among hermits, monks, and common priests, and among kings, princes, and lords of high degree. For men of all classes desire to partake of our good things, merchants, and those who exercise their craft in the forge, are led captive by a longing to know this art, nor are common mechanics content to be excluded from a share in it. They love the art as dearly as great lords. The goldsmiths are consumed with the desire cf knowing, though them we may excuse, since they have daily before their eyes that which they long to possess. But we may wonder that weavers, freemasons, tailors, cobblers, and needy priests join in the general search after the Philosopher's Stone, and that even painters and glaziers cannot restrain themselves from it. Nay, tinkers presumptuously aspire to exalt themselves by its means, though they should be content with the color with which glass is stained. Many of these workmen, however, have been deceived by giving credulous heed to impostors, who help them to convert their gold into smoke, and though they are grieved and disappointed at the loss, they yet buoy themselves up with sanguine thoughts, and hope that they will after all reach the goal. Alas, too many have I known, who, after amusing themselves with delusive hopes through a long life, have at last died in squalid poverty. For them, it would have been better if they had stayed their hands at once, seeing that they met with nothing but disappointment and vexation of spirit. For surely he who is not very learned will do well to think twice before he meddles with this art. Believe me, it is by no means a light matter to know all the secrets connected with the science. Nay, it is a profound philosophy, a subtle science, a sacred alchemy, concerning which I here intend to write in a style manly, but not curious. For he who desires to instruct the common people should speak to them in a language they understand. But though I must express myself in a plain and unassuming style, no candid reader should therefore contemn me. For all that before me have written on this matter have rendered their books obscure and unintelligible by an exaggerated use of poetical imagery, parables, and metaphors, which grievously obstruct the path of those who first enter on this field of knowledge. This is the reason that a beginner, who strives to put their precepts into practice, only loses his trouble and his money, as is daily seen. Hermes, Rhasis, Geber, Avicenna, Merlin, Hortulanus, Democritus, Morianus, Bacon, Raymond, Aristotle, and many others have concealed their meaning under a veil of obscurity. Hence their books, which they have handed down to us, have been a source of endless error and delusion to the vulgar and the learned. And, in spite of the beautiful conceits which abound in their writings, no one has been able to find a path. Through the wilderness of their words, yea, many have been reduced to despair. Anaxagoras indeed acquitted himself better than the rest in his book concerning natural changes. Of all the ancient sages whose writings I have read, he lays open most plainly the foundation of our knowledge. For this very reason Aristotle is wroth against him, and attacks him most virulently in many passages, as I can shew, his purpose being to keep men from following him. For he, Anaxagoras, was full of wisdom and love, may God above reward him for his goodness, and pardon the evil deeds of those who sow the seeds of enmity and hatred. To the latter class belonged that monk who set forth a pretentious book of 1,000 receipts from malice and the love of mischief, which was copied in many places, and deceived and deluded numerous inquirers, and reduced them to beggary. Moreover, he represented true and approved men as forgers and impostors. For this reason I am impelled by pity to set forth the truth in a few simple words, in order to warn you against false and deceitful teaching, if indeed you will pay attention to me and to my words. Throw away your volumes of recipes, for they are full of falsehood and fraud. Do not believe them, but give diligent heed to the maxim, that nothing is wrought without its own proper cause. This is the mistake into which those self-styled practical sages fall. They do not place knowledge on a firm foundation by inquiring into the cause of things. You should therefore constantly bear this momentous rule in mind, never to set about an experiment until you fully comprehend the why and the how. He who would make good progress in this art should also diligently eschew all falsehood. For God is truth, and it is he who shews this art to men. Therefore keep yourself above all things unspotted from the slightest taint of falsehood. Let it be fixed in your mind as an abiding principle, under no circumstances to procure for yourselves adulterated metals like those who seek to accomplish albifications and citrinations, which cannot abide a scorching test, and by which they produce false silver and false coin for the purpose of duping the credulous. But God has provided that no one should succeed in attaining to this blessed art, who loves that which is false rather than that which is true. If any man would obtain grace of God to discover the secrets of this ant, he should be a lover of justice and truth. Nor let him be 100 cages in so amad to follow zu art on account of its outward advantages. He who would enjoy the fruit of his inbore should be satisfied with much wealth as is sufficient. Let him ant waste time and trouble on divers methods of procedure, but let lum follow the drones of this book, which is called the Ordinal of Alchemy, the Cree, Mali, and everlasting Andard. For as the Onlinal instructs the presbyters concertip the ministry of days which they must observe, so all the true and useful touching of al, costos bonus o aliami is here set forth the proper order. Wherefore, this book is of inestimable value for the acquisition of the precious science, nor can its truth ever be denied, though it be composed in an unassuming style. As I have received this art by Dean Gantz, so I says it forth upon in 7 chapters as fully as my fealty will permit. For I remember what is said about the judgment of God at the last day. The first chapter will show what persons from among the common people can attain to this knowledge, and why the science of alchemy was by the ancients called blessed and sacred. In the second chapter will be set forth the wise joy and the long labors of those who follow this art. The third chapter will, for the sake of my fellow men, contain a faithful description of the substance of that stone, which the Arabians call the elixir. There you will learn whence it is obtained. The fourth chapter will treat of the gross part of the work, which is foul and little muatori, to delicate perm. The fifth chapter is concerned with the subtle part of the prose which God has andanal for the learned only, but which few of the learned CR comprehend, so that the secret is really possessed by very few. The sixth chapter deals with the question of proportion, and with increment of this world below, with this spilier of hoven above, of which a right mass standing greatly laps many learner and proves of great mystis to their wonderful art. The seventh chapter will truly add fruit to you, the principles in accordance with which your fire should be regulated. Now, O Lord, Do thou guide and assist 5. Desire to gird my F to my everyone that shall happens to add this book. I am planned to offer AP praise for my undiam unto alter that which I bave Watan for the better, or in the wa, on the pain of my most Grevians anathema. For where the sense is shakun, this is for the purpose of any hint of a GL table be altered in a critical passage. It may destroy the value of the whole book. Therefore, are that which I am written be preserved intact, for though the language be humble, yet Ja conveys truths al most momentous importano, amelet fuld. Be read not once or twice, but 20 times. Your best plan will be to read many books on alchemy, and this one last of all, Devs Jehovah, MV and DV, Bo, Infi, Mum, Umben, Chetipi, Real Finisteli Ethium, 111 Netherlands Antillean Gilderselic Bon, Mercury, Coelv, Angeli Meteor, Terra, Homo, Air, P, Fum, Sulfur, Lapides, Ignis, Planta, S, Aqua, Metalla, Persella, Inane Tenebra, Abishausete, Malum, 5, N, Satan, NGAA, HV, in Thomas Norton's Chemical Treatise, A, Chapter L, Most Wonderful Magistery and Archimagistery, is the tincture of med alchemy, the mere flow, science of the secret philosophy, the singular gift he towed upon men, though the PM of Almighty God, which in Inve never dismered by the labor of them. It's but only by revitation and the touching of others. It was never bought or sold for a price to any of those who ampoftoi bit bus always be granted thigh the gear of God alone, to worthy men, unprefert by Langlabmir, and the lip of Tim, it was give to live the citate of MIT Potts and Coltu, Yanglory, hope, and fea, and removes ambition, vigilance, and exoma it mitigas adversity, and saves men FM being overwhelmed by it. Whoever tas podokje of malo anemu MND is calm with the mutil way some disdain to call this art sacred, bika. Thui any tim aini mete shunkoiku fit, though alkamut, he decimus of confiring any gone thing tam duhar willful and stubs under D, incapable of possessing that which is the cause of all good. Maves, it firmed that our aut pralines mithing but ghoul and silver, which are colliered into inquiry, and when astuced into cups, Dibanapad coal, by one thought valuable and precious of all dungs winely, are upon the seathan min of thus school conclude that this s, if jolded by its effect claimed to be regarded as sacred. To this objection, we answer what we know to be true, that the science of this art has never been fully revealed to anyone who has not approved himself worthy by a good amiable life, and who has not shown himself to be deserving of this gracious gift by his love of truth, virtue, and knowledge. From those who are otherwise minded, this knowledge must ever remain concealed. Nor can anyone attain to this art, unless there be some person sent by God to instruct him in it. For the matter is so glanious and wonderful that it cannot be fully delivered to anyone but by word of mouth. Moreover, if any man would receive it, he must take a great and sacred oath, that as we his teachers refuse high rank and fame, so he will not be too eager for these frivolous distinctions, and that he will not be so presumptuous as to make the secret known to his own son, for propinquity of blood, or affinity, should be held of no account. In this our magistery nearness of blood, as such, does not entitle anyone to be let into the secret, but only viston, whether in those near to us or in strangs. Therefore, you should carefully test and examine the life, character, and mental aptitude of any Pasian who would be initiated in this ant, and then you should bind him by a sacred oath not to let our magistry be commonly or vulgarly known. Only when he begins to grow old and feeble, he may reveal it to one person, but not to more. And that one man must be virtuous, and generally approved by his fellow, for this magistery must always remain a secret science. And the reason that compels us to be so careful is obvious. If any wicked man should learn to practice this art, the event would be fraught with great danger to Christendom. For such a man would overstep all bounds of moderation, and would remove from their hereditary thrones those legitimate princes who rule over the peoples of Christendom. And the punishment of this wickedness would fill upon him who had instructed that unworthy person in our art in order. Then, to avoid such an outbreak of overweening pride, he, who paused the knowledge of these art, should be scrupulously careful lo he delivers it to another, and should regard it as the peculiar privilege of those who excel in virtue. But even if this art could, on account of its effects, be justly denied a claim to sanctity, it would still be sacred on account of its nature and mens. For on the one hand, no one can discover it except by the grace of God, so it is also holy, because it is a divine labor, and work to change vile copper into the finest silver and gold, for on one could disceram of producing much effects by his own tight. Seeing that the substances are divers, one cut separate that which God has joined together. Nor could the course of nature be quickened, unless God himself had granted the aid of this mighty science to those whom one loves. Therefore, the ancient sage have well called alchemy a sacred science, and no one should be so presumptuous as to cast away the lest gift of God. For let is only considered that God has ilden this knowledge from grest and learned doctors, and out of his mercy has revealed it to men of low degree, who are faithful, lovers of truth, and lowly of heart. And as there are only even planets among the vast multitude of the stars of heaven, so, amongst millions of men, hardly seven's alum to us knowledge. As we watch men's lives, we see and learn that many scholars of profound erudition, with countless other inquirers, have strived to acquire our science, and yet that all their labor has produced as a net result. Nothing, though they have spent all their substance in the search, it has nevertheless turned out a failure. They have again and again missed the mark at which they aimed, and at last they have given up the quest in despair, and have arrived at the latter conclusion, that the art one thing but rank fiction and imposture as the outcome of their fruitless inquiries, they have bopon to denounce our magistery for a vain and empty thing. Let me tell such men that they take too much upon themselves in thinking that that must be naught which their wisdom is Cilician to compass. But we are not greatly troubled by their calumnies and injurious ones, for those who are wise in their own cons, while in reality they understand nothing, are not the PR for whom our feast is prepared. Though these men cannot understand out magistery, yet, for all timid, it mim remain true, and though its truth be denied by some who are lifted up by the main pride of empty wisdom, all wise men will mim it, that these who have continually ever looked upon a thing cannot be allowed to give an authoritative opinion about it. It would be foolish indeed to attach any value to a blind man's opinion boot painting, and though these men are so proud of their profanity-run wisdom, very much doubt whether they could build the Tower of St. Paul's, London, or remove it from its foundation. But it is more difficult still to believe that they are lean Crowley to penetrate the most profound secret which this world can tam. Well, now, we will say no more about them, but deliver them over to the wretchedness of their own ignorance. Nar, you who seek this wisdom, tears to distinguish the false, the true, all true anchors into the art of alchemy, Alid be well versed in the primary philosophy. Other, all then Lahaim will be Wayne, the true seeker, undermuck the urch. On his own account, for while Boo engidly hopes to find our delectable stone, he does not wish to see others involved in any jom he may incur. He therefore conducts all the experiments at his own cost, nor does he grudge the expense which their in-hour require consumes his mibstance and empties his confers and advances step by step with great patience, basing his hope on God's assistance alone. Impostors, on the other hand, wander in ragged gown from city to city, and set traps for the unwary, when they may dupe with their pretended pledge and outwit by vain talk and perjury. They say that they can augment were, and affirm with a false oath that they to ply both gold and silver. In thus they ingratiate themselves with the covetous, producing the excellent conjunction of fraud and avarice. But in no long time the multiplier of gold is found to have deceived his credulous victim with his magnificent passes, and lua perjured assertions, and the covetous and reluce to beggary. This must be the result if one is not from the very finier on his guard against the deceitful language of the multiplier. Of these person I might punk into great length, but am afraid of uncaging men who are of themselves dispersed to evil. I fear that by saying any more I might possibly do as much harm as good, and therefore I will only ID one word to the wise. If these persons really possess the knowledge to which they pretend, they would take good care not to me it known to others, nor would they have need to grabat losting of their knowledge, and shosting the credulous out of their money. If these impostors were punished according to their deserts in all places where they drive the falnient trade, there would poor be so many of them. Now this fellow's prit forward lying a Persians about nature when they peak of the multiplication of metals. For of this one thing you may rest assured, Manila are never multiplied. Such a thing would be contrary to nature's methods. Nature never multiplies anything, except in either one or the other of these two ways, whether by decay, which we call ponifaction, or in the case of animate wretchers by propagation. In the case of tatuis, there can be no propagation. Though our stone exhibits somoing like a putrefaction destroys and corrupts, but in order to be fruitful, it must go forward in some convenient place. Metals are generated in the earth, for above ground they are subject to us, hence above ground is the place of the corruption of metals and of their gradual destruction. The cause which we assign for this fact is that above ground they are not in their proper element, and an unnatural position is destructive to natural objects, as we see, for instance, that shiz die when they are taken out of the water, and as it is natural for men, beasts, and birds to live in the air, so stones and metals are naturally generated under the earth. Physicians and apothecaries do not look for aquatic flowers on arid hulls. God in his wisdom has ordained that everything should grow in its own place. I know that some deny this principle, and assert that metals are multiplied. For, they say, the vitim of silver, lead, tin, anal iron, which we find in the earth, we sometimes rich and sometimes poor, and such diversity would be totally inexplicable if the ictals did not multiply or grow. This fact then thought to prove that metals grow underground, and they grow underground. Why, it is asked, should they not grow above ground in a vessel, which protects them from the influences of fire, water, and air? Our answer to this argument is that it proves nothing, because the emendations are not the mom. In the TWN cases, for the only efficient cause of metals is the mineral virtue, which is not found in every kind of canth, lint, inly in certain places and close mines, into which the celestial splice pours its rays in a deep direction year in year, and, according to the arrangement of the metallic substance in these places, this or that metal is gradually formed. Only few parts of the charitable for such ganention, lion then, can let be multift of the cardle. Every person of an intelligence knows that in the case of congealed water, or ice, to water, before it becomes handinol, is more plentiful in some places than in others. Before its correlation, it exists in all quantities in brooks and ditches, while more considerable veins of it are found in lake and river afterwards. Linga quantitim of ice are say, where there was much water, hat it would manifestly be abund, to say that the ice must have grown or multiplicit in the lake and rivers, because they contain greater masses of it than ditches or brooks in the same way. The metals do not necessarily grow in the mountains, because in some places they exist in larger quantities than in others. A certain portion of any metal can never be increased in quantity by the action of an inherent principle, and herein minerals differ from vegetables and animals. A vegetable seed, such as an acorn, virtually contains within itself the trunk and the leaves of a trio, though they cannot at a given moment be discerned with the eye. But metals always remain exactly the same in their combustion, though they be dissolved with strong waters. An ounce of silver can never become more or less than an ounce of silver, for nothing can be mulliplied by inward action, unless it belong to the vegetable kingdom, or the family of sensitive creatures, but the metals are denuntiary objects in potens either seed nor Mason hues. We conclude that all multipliers of metals should be prudent to exercise their fraudulent trade, for while a metal has once been generated, it is never added to by growth. Nevertheless, we have KWN one metal to be transmuted into the of a different kind by means of the cognate nature of their substances. So, for instance, iron has been changed into one. But nothing can produce real silver or gold except the medicine of the philosopher. Hence the falsehoods affected by the multipliers are eschewed and shunned by all true sages. But all honor and reverence is due to the genuine art of sacred alchemy, which is concerned with the precious medicine that has virtue to produce pure gold and silver. Of this an example is in a certain city of Catalonia, which Raymond Lullius is supposed to have drawn up. It consists of a series of 7 images and is designed to shadow out the way of truth. 3 of these pictures represent Matroni hair folder, and 4 of them repassos in of glit flowing garb. On the hems of their garments appear certain letters, seminin, of which I will pred obspat. I was once an old iron horseshoe. Ach, the inscription on the ment come woman. Fast now I am the past sis. L, says another woman, was iron smeltel from the ore, but now I am become pure and solid gold. Says a third, was once a battered prove of copper, now I am all silver. The 4th firm lays once copper, inerated in a velo place, but at the billing of God. I have now become perfect gold. 1. Says the filth figure, who was once fine and puri. W. Med, excellent gull. The 6th ligur purissinims that it was during 200 vem enim pipe, but Imar Kerwin by all for immense silver. The nth says, a wondrous thing I happened to me. I have become lead out of gold, but certainly my sisters are nearer than L. 'Tis a nice drives its me firm a certain Kim Alchem of histrious memory win, being a genomes and noble, like-hearted Prinko. Finit set him CLF to study this art. He sawed not decay firm nature, lay ML by night, mil ad lav catrutal from her meal. Buer King Herois, alam did you like thing, being thely versed in every kind of leaning. His kumbab shays with the fom great branches of Usteral Scientori, Miliol alchemy, and atmal magic, uit therein lease hitmelf and followed to Duman, who knows things only as they airy, and Bilsal is the man when duly proves that which affrains to no log. It was his opinion that many are deval in thinking that dai understand that of which they do not know the calm. An old proverb that in a buslicht of by nation, there is often ut even a grain of truck knowledge. A time that by the lashit of powing everything, and by wise, meant, Imed men are even uo adilong to their stock of inten raikalman under titiad themselves, and all things without common and bonas, uni worthing beasts. Lack of nolals rendera men fierce and wild, but instraflet rallo them mild, and gente now the custoin. Bar job to despic to win dire to understand the AUC of nature, but in Allen Unco King, splain thus, no one, you, should be instructed in the Soren liberal semos, except 3, who were nobly born and brilliantly in bed, and Timmy Lewin Hal once devoted himself knowledge should be latter. Spend this life its pursuit, hence the ancient called the Tim 7 liberal sciences, because foes who wish to be Jfect adopts in them should delight then in a spirit of liberty. Freedom from all mundane cares is necessary, for Han Alto would apply Fumad thoroughly to the lie of human law. And W wishes to become a Ope scholar in many sciences has much more solid reasons for Tarnang loose back on the world and pleasures. This fact sufficiently shews the ground on which learned Yunin are despised. Yes, the glowless memory of the AI who increases day by day in the knowledge of truth cannot perial the man who loses WDON, justice and grind, may be rejected in many places, but time will circle Hosbrow with O of gold. In the meantime, we just expect that those who love knowledge for its own sake shall be crude by the ignorant multitude. Nevertheless, it should be home in windtime thaug, many devote tumults to this stuli for the sake of again, yet avarice mid science are incompatible, voland, feline. By whim affection are set on mare lucre will never discover the accrets of this art, but he who delights in knowledge for its own sale approaches the study of our art in the right spirit, and such a man is bound to succeed. There is no need to lengthen out this chapter any further, since we have already set forth who they are that may, with reasonable hope of success, apply themselves to the study of sacred alchemy. Let me repest that Otto such person should be a fatal Christian, and a man who is not easily moved FM is perpom. He should be free frog ambition, free from the necessity of borrowing from others, full of patience and tolerance, and of unwavering confidence in good falsehood, prepared to follow knowledge through good and evil report. H life should be from gills, falsehood, and S such men, Utoa possess meal aptitude for becoming proficients in this science. The next chapter deals with joy and sorrow. Chapter ill. In Normandy, there once lived a monk who deceived Ami, persons of different ranks in life, when his mud in becoming, filled with the von conceit that he jud a perfect knowledge of Alati, who gons unself up to Ami valut joy that be linger, went one of his senses. Leos purposmus zeal, one will attempt me by ling, the foaling hand artive fur un ache of illustration. The monk Mao led a vagrant life in France, in forgetfulness of his vow, and in the indulgence of his low desires. A lust, ho, come to this langdom, and tempt to persuade all men that he had a perfect understanding of the art of alchemy, which he said he had obtained froas a certain book of recipes. Was doways of acnering a mugbri dowel, which should ban down Treglosi, or his name to posterity, and tore ever sublesh. His reputation in this island one fee was always thinking how he, the sad wealthy, which he thought he world soon, be able to procure at last. He said to himself, behold, I W where tall BD a fastball onan, WHS can aid me, matter, and help me to the fulfillment of my wish, which is, to Congius Manor, Salisbury Plain, 15 magnificent abbeys in a short space of time, and each within a mile of the kneel in pursuance of the Dean, the male seen to me and land open his whole plan, at the same time requesting me to as him with myself. I have promised before the shrine of St. James not to divulge his name, but vaught I may without prejudice to my vow as PK about his foolish undertaking Aller telling me of his proficiency in this glorious art. He, after he wanted thine but an opportunity of laboring for the king's good, and person from the camel to buy tan for the adored Miles, AR to the Expinus. He said it would be easy for him to mod be it good, but he was in great doubt it when, from whom, and how he was to purse the land. Listening to the exposition of his lofty design, I desired to test bis hang, and we o felge of shalefic fence, MND, I full cut in these branches of attainment he was. Sully one skelt yerentained if, and let my own counsel in order that in learn more about his durs. So I told him that the mum was what sut partams de inibal befo king, for everyone well expon the same as an e-tail, if pinf of his passion was forthcoming the monk, and he liad the few substance which would supply once dose him with all that he needed, and that within 40 days low cold triumphantly demonstrate to me the truth of his, replied that I would not now press him any further, but it I would at the allotted sign nut. When the date which he had fixed arrived, the monk's science evaporated, and all his alibi and lofty designs vandut thm air as the impostor had come. So he departed us without gmat shame and confinion. On shortly awarded, he had deserved many land, hearted people, and had then again returned to France. It seemed a great pity that 15 be sense of religion, sanctity, and learning should so normomously have vanished with him. It was also wonderful that Aicha Min could have deluded himself into the belief that he could erect Abbey, while he himself could not live true to his coup of obedience, and must needs wander about as an apostate vagabond, for use purpose of obtaining a knowledge of this sacred art. But I have already repeatedly said that just because it is sacred, no false or decastful opinion can attain to it to order to illustrate my meaning. I will add another example. Thoreau was a man who thought that he was as deeply versed in this art as Raymond Lullins or Friar Bacon, for which reason he was so presumptuous as to call himself perilous. He was the priest of a small town, not far from the city of London, and was thought by others to have little skill in preaching. This man felt sorrow that he had discovered the secret of our art, and so, in order to advance biz fun, he formed the design of towing a budge over the themes for the benefit al travelers, and for the conventicus of the whole neighborhood bin nothing would serve him, but he must set up a grand, sad, lofty structure, which similed compel the admiration of all beholders. It was to have towers olivered with flaming gold, and its pillars were to be such to hid diver be and man before. He frequently spoke of the new thing which he was going to accomplish, for his ridge was by firm, and will by night, and whiz to endure, for over it glory was never to grow dim. Then he resolved different plans in his find concerning the best manner of worrying out Televane. At first, he thought that flaming torch would answer he PRPS and slavitel, a plan of thing them up in S numbers. But soon he was seized with a fear that after his death the trust goes of his benefaction night neglect the this, and apply D and carry allotted to cut PE other way. This he at length arrived at the conclusion that it would be best to light up late by night with great faming go and carbonaceous, such as should be visible, are and wide, and reliate their splendor in all Darasis. I hear main he wanted wall new misgivings, where such carbuncles could be found, and where he should meet with wise and reliable men, who would trend through all the countries of the world, and procure for him a sumped number of the jets. These thoughts caused him so much anxiety that he wasted away to a mere shadow. All this time of come he was firmly persuaded that Belind bound the true secret of art, but when the year came to an end, his net and all his substance vanished with it, for he had opened his glass vessel and found that it contained neither gold nor H. Then he few Listo a great pain, and caned himself in the bitterness of her heart, for he had spent all us wealth, and passed the rest of his life in poverty. What more shall I say about him? His case speaks for itself. Honius. When learned scholars and those who frequent the schools hear of the melancholy late of these foolish persons, Flay ought to take warnings, and remember that the same thing may happen to themselves, if they are not constantly on their grand, for many of them are bit too ready lightly to receive all calm. Clusen, however false, if they only find Thrain boldly asserted in this easy and umptioning cathans may bring in traits poverty and vexation of spirit. The hope afforded by such a catching is an empty delight and a veritable fool's paradisu, but the true Sioux of our art stay their hope in God alone, since Dicey W that without him everything is a delusion and a failure, for think you know that. A man who I not the beginning of all no lows cannot conduct his acquary to a successful and noma OGL, can comprehend without twice mid though the exposition of the art be untenal in his you, without then it is but idle breath to him. Of thee, O God, comes all D and successful effort, thon art of all good things, both the bogging and the on no, I have tall yem a thing of the joy such is kutusad by the vain hopes of foolish inquires. Hear now also about the sorrow, if which this at has a source to many whose hopes have been grievously disappointed. The first cause of sorrow is to see and realize that among the many who seal this art only few ever find it, and that one can atom this knowledge unless he be taught before he begins, and he in Tili and finally Eruloved, Osa apprehend it by the teaching of another. The subtle shades of natural differences must be wall Genawa, to th inan who, to be initiated in the most profitable act of the Unisu, no form of words can be accurate as to safeguard the learner against error. For many who have now departed this life have gone widely at me before they finally coded in their search after our stone. Either at the very nature or at a later stage of the work, all are liable to M. Until they are enlightened by the teaching of experience, Mal hit upon the proper regulation of heat and cold. Nobody is more liable to error in respect to this matter than your bold and overconfident inquirer. Nobody sooner mars our work than he, who is in too great a hurry to complete it. The man who would bring this matter to perfection should set about it cantionally and beadfully. The most grievous circumstance connected with our art is that if you make a mistake in any part of it, you have to do it all over again from the very beginning. Anyone who gives himself up to this search must therefore expect to inset with much vexation of pint. He will frequently have to change his course in consequence of new descenes which he miles. His espermats will often turn out failures. His mind will often be in a state of doubt and perplexity, and thus he will continue to be vexed by conflicting results, until at length he adds the goal of his desire again. Let me tell you a little bent the sorrows and troubles of the alchemist, which may considerably moderate ym desire to acquire thin practice of this art. At first it is most difficult, as the sage say, to find out among as many impostors the man who he in perfect understanding of our science. And when you have found a truly learned motor, you have not yet by any means left all your trouble far behind. If your mind is devoted to virtue, the devil will do his toss to frustrate your search by ons or the other of tree-stumbling blocks, namely haste, despair, or deception. For he is afraid of the good whales which you, my do ill, you succumb. I am musing this secret. The first danger lies in undue haste, which destroys in me and the work of many. All authors who have written about thus art agas in saying life die author of the little back of the file upiels fua, that he is of a deal. Hence he will the soonest make an end who tarries a little at the beginning. And those who act otherwise will discover to their cost the truth of the proverb which says that the greater haste we make, the less will be our speed. For he who is in a hurry will complete his work needs in a month, nor yet in a year aid in the art. It will always be true that the man who is in a hurry will never be without matter of complaint. KST assured also that last will precipitate you from the pinnacle of truth. It is the devil's subtlest device to ensnare us. For this, Tainate is an inti by which he causes us to wander from the Riju path. The man who has found grace stoutly sets, ass-face agamist, hurry. He does so as a matter of habit. For 10 moment of time, haste may mar your whole work. Therefore be on your guard against hurry. Accounting it as a device of the time will not allow me to caution you with sufficient vehemence of feeling against habits of hurried work. Many pierced themselves through with sharp sorrows, became they are always in a hurry, and full of impatience to reach the goal, which comes almit through the temptation of Satan. I will say no more about hurry, but all is he who possesses patience. If the enemy does not prevail against you by hurry, he will ammalt you with despondency, and will be constantly dung into your ads discouraging thoughts, how those with seal this art are many, while they are few that find it NML, how the who fat are often wiser men than yourself. He will then ask you what hope there can be of your attaining the grand. Moreover, he will vos wine with Elonists, whether Upik Master Bimkel proved of the secret which I profess to impart to you, or whether he is not concealing from you the best part of that which he knows. The evil one will leave, tell your mind with their doubts, in turn you from your purpose by dilid noy and despondency, nor will anything avall against us solis, except the calm confiance inspired by virtue, and the sound conclusions of your tears will be entered to the winds if you quietly consider the high character of your master and teacher, or you desat if you can call to mind that he was induced to instrue you by fave, and by no selfish motive. It is difficult indeed to trust a man who offers you live, for such a param sunda more in need of yon than you of him. But if your master fought such a man as I bave directed you to seek, and if he has waited for you to come to him, you might to bow stigly armed against the shafts of distrust. If you muster be at all Ishmanus mine was, you can have no excuse for drinting him, for mine was noble and true, a lover of justice, and an enemy in deceit. Moreover, he was a good keeper of his secret, and alien others ostentatiously display all their knowledge, and held his peace as if he knew nothing. When others talked in his presence about the colors of the rose, he would listen in grave and impenetrable silence. His I attended during many years, but he would not impart to me anything of moment, equal to made me submit to many tests for the purpose of proving my dispoiton, and when he had found me faithful and true, and had seen the great hope which I had conceived to my mind, I obtained favor in his eyes through the will of God, and his heart inclined to me, when at length he thought that I should not be put off any longer, since my scholarly attainments and the generous aspiration of my soul had moved his heart, and made it go out to me. He took up his pen, and waste to I as follows, my faithful fraud and beloved brother. I am constrained to accede to your request, as no other purse lick you will ever come to me. The time is naval fa you to receive this favor of me on exem, of your manly character and firm faith, your approved viric and wisdom, your touchfulness, love and perseverance, mere constancy, and the generous ration of your soul. This your excellent mental condition will now reward, to your lasting solace and comfort, Irie divulging to you the mighty scoret. For this purpose, it is necessary to converse with you by word of mouth. If laid open to you the wort in westing, I sold flating my oath, hence it is necessary that we would pict, and when you come, I will make you the heir of my art, and depart trom. This land, you shall be my brother, and my heir in respect of one's get, which is the dean of the loaned. Riaz give thanks to God for this message. It is better than to become heir apparent to a crown. Fought only those whom Jella chosen mocks to his own like heavenly saints ever receive this art by which he is so highly honored. I will write to more to you at TLM present time sent on horseback, and come to use without delay. When I bald peruse these line, I set out at the very same hormat once fusted to my master, though the distinct excalade 100 mil I contented with Tim. Fontides, mal named all the secrets of alchemy, though before it umbes tool philosophy well as my other person in the kingdom vet. It would he mish to suppose that the www.atel can be completed within Fort's day, my, that was fully stinctual with at Tim, bin the wick itself equinis da younger pat. Then all that imi bom dark benimas shemans. The light, when I held the state of nature lured, I saw so damnly the card the veil onde off everything, that it was no longer pedibule for me to do la tour d'acquier. High was fortunate in your master, as I. You will never be aslide by despondency. The third enemy, against whom you must guard, is deceit. Ani tid spelas enom dangerous than the other two. The servants whom you employ to feed your furances are fru. Quently most toothy some are cures, and go and sep wt they should be a randing the free. Aber are deprave, and you all she ran dicey cur, other again, are eater sample or conceited and over. Confluent, and dishy instructions. Wineloof fingen attentive of other people's property, or dies or drunken. Apedge, and absence-minded, be on your guard. Egel. At these, if you wish to be peril, some great for servants are faithful, they are generally stupid, those who are quick-howl, are generally also leck, and it is difficul's water. The loenital or the stupil are the greater evil of the for when I had all my experiments in proper train. Some they serven away with my material and utensils, and juffs we nothing bad the empty aliabe, and why I calculated the cast time and labor of beginning the work all over again, that a lot in the items MJ had vavel to an everlasting farewell to this art of alchemy in R. It will handly be believed up completely. I had been stripped of all that I possessed, although 10 trustworthy persons still sufficed to attest the fast. Joe did the low was so grunt that it could hardly have been inflicted on me by Lerman agency alone, without the instigation and cue operation of the devil. I also in D and flicks of life, of which a merchant's wife bereft me, and I procured a quintience, with many other precious preparation. But of all these things I was robbed by wicked men, and thus found, to my smart, that in the Serapis cup of this world's joy there is a liberal infusion of bitterness. Let me tell you a little more of what has fallen under my observation, concoming the perplexity of this work. The calamity of which I am thinking happened to a good and godly mun, and one am the only personal can give a true account of it. Thomas Dalton, a devout and religious servant of God, pours ed a larger quantity of the reed medicine than us, over been tained by any other English lumu. Now a certain miglet of King Edward's homehold, named Thomas Herbert, dragged this Dalton forth by violence from an brie in Glancentershire, and brought him before the king, where he was confronted with Delvis for Dalton find Bime scribe, Terry. In this William Delvis, Amal Delvis had told the king about Dalton's skill in this art. Delvis was a faithful servant who always stood in the presence of King Edward, and he depole that within an hour Dalton had made for himself 1,000 pounds storting of gold, fully equal to that of the royal coin, and he confirmed his testimony by a most sacred cath upon the Bible. Then Dalton looked full upon Delvis and said, O Delvis, then Hasper, jured thyself thou hast foully broken the pledge thou gavest me, and hast betrayed me even as Jada betrayed his master. I did, indeed, rejoined Delvis, once swear to thee that I would not betray thy secret, yet I do not consider myself as guilty of perjury, since the service of my king and country release me from my nath. Then Daltu Haley answered Lum thus, This subterfuge does ant excuse thy perjury, for if it dis, frau could the king NSF trust thee, who final see thy perjury intos prescrico. And, he continued turning to his majesty, I do allude it that I passed this medicine for a long time, but at length it was only a source of grief and anxiety to me. Ein the four. After retiring to that Weissy from which I was brought hither, I threw it into a tidal river which is daily renewed by the ebb and flow of Tixi, thim as much wealth I has been lost as would Inavu Ofiud for the mitit al singont of 20,000 sun, she ing have been willing to go forth and recover the idly sepulchri. For the love of God, I kept this moine muy years, in order that through its I might succor a king who should undrake this expedition, but as this sacred duty was forgone, the medicine is ny irrecoverably lost. The king replied that it was a fula act to destroy so wonderful a treasure, and demanded Tlux Dalton should prepare so mu more of the Mexine. No, sal dalum, ud over b. Why not? Inquired the king. How did you obtain? Dalton Sepland, that he had received it from a learned canon of Lichfield, whose works he had diligently attended to during many years, and at Lungil the Caden had guest bed to Ham as much of the medicine as Lai had ever possessed. Then the king gave Dales 4 marks, with liberty to depart whitheroever be desirable, and, at Parung, he episode grief and consem that he had not lawn Dalton before, but as it often happens that the worst timats are found in the retinines of King's Ferbert, how caused Dalton to be, sated, robbed of the money which the king had given him, and carried off to Stepney, where be detained him a long time. Thence Dalton was conveyed by Herbert to a castle in Gloucestershire, cast to the dungeon thereof, and kept close prisoner for 4 years, during which period he was tormented by Herbert in every conceivable manner at length be who led forth to min. And when he saw the ministers of death, well, O blessed Lord Jesus, I have been separated from thee. Tung thou didst give me this knowledge, and I have used it without overweening prile. I have not been able to find a fit person to whom I might have bequeathed my wisdom. Therefore, dearest Lo, I now rain thy gift into thy hands. Then he poured forth a devout prayer, MMD, thereupon, tum to the executioner and said, with a simile, Now thou mayst work thy will. When Barbert handed these words, his eyes filled with tears, because neither deceit, imprisonment, nor death could induce his victim to yield up the precious Surrey, and he bade his servants let the LD man go, as his obstinacy was not to be ver come. Tien Datin arose, looked about him with sadness and disappointment depicted in Iris' countenance, and departs with a heavy heart, for he had no desire to live even another year. This injury happened to him through the greed and cruelty of godless men. Herbert did not long after, and Delvis lost high life at Tewkesbury. Such are the sufferings which they who aspire to a knowledge of this and must lay then account with having to bear. Yet we also see how the greed of wicked men overreaches Italt, for if Herbert had treated Dalt with kindness and gentleness, instead of with cruelty, insolence, and violence, much advantage might have been reaped not only by the king, but also by the entire commonwealth. Yet we need not wonder that gracious means were not used, for sin negus everywhere in this kingdom otherwise, the people might have Ordinal, great relief 6 millimeters mates and taxes, and much money might have been bestowed in clarity among knights, priests, and the common people. Hence we may learn that profligate violence is incapable of acquiring wisdom, for virtue and vice are contrary the one to the other, and men, abandoned to the one, cameo receive the I-word of the other. If victim persons could, in a full knowledge of this art, their overbearing insolence would grow unendurable, and their ambition would over all bounds, they would by its means become worse men than they were before. Now this chapter respecting the delegas and sufferings of our art is finished. The next will declare the matter of our stone. Chapter ill. Tonsilus had been engaged in the momentous search during Norton Isti year's dryhow too, and Ham, in the western parts, had been employed day and night in practical experiments. Yet they did aid find this BLE science, and they did not know Tim matter and root of the art, but sought it by a mistaken accent, until they had wastale their live D goods. They were put to great expene, loss, and suffering, or the recipes according to which they worked. Then Tom complained to me with tears that he was in great bitterness of soul, because he had spent the better part of life file on receipts, vile substances, BHS, gains roots, and grasses of which he cumarat any species, as for instance, crowfoot, celandine, Neverion, Luania, and Mortagon, also upon hair, T.S. vervain, excremouts and olmopan antimony, anic, hay, wax and wire ukikune, vitriol, amchasita, and all kinds of minerals. On analgana, albifications, and citramations, all had heen reduced to nothing by G's oppositions, for he bailed not well Comilena adurpus, and the due proportion of Turul oth altis he had failed with all these substances he tumult antling. Could be better than to operate human blood. Mutil told him that by a fierce fire blood was destroyed, and converted into smoke thea, he besow in by the love of Chuist to denlane to him the true substance of Ty stone. Tasil, I replied, what good would it do an old man like you? Renounce this pursuit and give yourself up to prayer, for that is what your time of life requires. If you did know the substance of our stone, you would fall a victim to old age before you could prepare L, but he bailed me not to trouble myself about what might be the result to himself. It would be a comfort to me to know the substance of the stone, which I have ought so long. Tonsil, I said, your request LA more easily mail. Then granted PR all the authors who deal with this subject write about it by plaskier language, and not me of them dockles it plainly nay. They beach God to reave them soldenly st of this world. If they ever write book about the Grand Street, for many of them have been fearful of committing to paper more than was right about this science, and not one of them has given me than 1 or 2 plan hints respecting it. They did not with the object of divulging Tice's secret to the world, but in an obscurely elusive style, in order that they MMGL be able to ret the who understood their meaning as brothers, Anil fellow Sedeps Lanko. You must not be content with resing only one, sock, but you Sean Stunley of any of author use. According to the learned Arnold, one Brock opens up the understanding of another. The same thoughts expelled by the Germal Anaxmones, who testifies that ill a man will not tallow the trouble of rolling minty bucks. He can never attain to a practical knowledge of nur art, but though may not reveal to you for the sake of charity, wita has never yet been plainly set forth by the brethren of our art, I may at least give you some comfort by answering as straightforwardly as I can any question which you may lie. To put to me, good master, be replied, tell me truly whether the Sulastans be sun gold and 3 epori, or sun and moon, silver, or whether these three most be taken together, or whether it be gold by itself, or mercury by itself, or whether sulpibus with these two be the substance of the stone, or is sate of Ammons nearer the truth, or is some other mineral the right thing to use in our art, the questions you have put, tonal, are wisely and astutely conceived. Nevertheless, you have not mined the stars, except generically, for you must take a part of the and of other things at various times, according to the requirements of their art divers, things are used in the preparation of our stone, but that are too material, and only, and stone beta to doboen, there is the same difference as that between a mother and her offspring, or, looking at the matter from another point of view, the difference resembles that which exists between male and nil finale. These two substances will furnish you with all that you need. As for the white tincture, if you are wise, one of these you shall find to be a stone, which is rightly named Becca, like a stone. It is destructible by Lear, yet it is not like a stone to the towels or the RHT, but is a fire-cartly powder, of all red in its separate form. We call it our ground litharge. At first it is brown and ruddy, and then of a whitish color. It is called our chosen Marcus, and 1 ounce of it is worth more 50 pounds. Yet is it not sold in the cities of Christendom. But he who desires it must either get it made by someone else, or preparch himself. There is this advantage concerning it, that to make ice well dispense with all most of repeating the task. Ancient writers call it a thing of small price, because it is lightly escoined by the merchants, and no one that finds it cares to pice it up, any more than if it were an ounce of dirt. Few will to live that it is a pemmel of great price, for his Lamarn to none but the wise. Thus have I laid bare to you a great parrot, more plainly than any of the dead masters. Then, Tonsilus, you must also have another stone, or else you want you upulum texile. This stone in must glanfranbric de Italisa stone, and looks like a stone of singular transparency, and brilliance. 1 ounce of it may, in most places, be obtained for about 20 shillings. Its name is magnesia, bole. Its real nature is KRN to few. I found on the tops of the Englist mountains, and in the lowest depths of the Karth, Plato knew its properties and called it by its name. Chancer says in the Cat Ion's tale, that I is called Dyson. Thin defining in Dan term and Langane still move up Lasley of Shire, at it is impossible to talerstand a thing, if for me, winlegible Tom Anther, still less intelligible is Sulaned. Neventhols, ini tamsil, I will endeavor to explain to you the imming of magnolia in our own Tonglin mages, is Greek, and is equivalent to the Latin mirabile. Nex is money, war, science is God. That is to May. It is after in which mic ocune in age is unvolval. Now you know what magnant ityarix eris, und in it is hidden a wonderful and divine Socrat. These two aims, my Tomulus, you grant takasir materials for the preparation of the rixir, thogly at first no further materials are needed, yet as I have already hunted, de vera uther lungs are of great me, in our art great act was never before oplanly expounded. But taily my explanation in all its fullness, and I will pray God, jest my excess of frankness be reckoned to me for a crime, for I fear that I have suffered my pen to run rot. Though few may understand what I have said, yet these are some sticus of this. Art so subtle, cunning, and keen-witted that still fewer data would suffice to them for the discovery of all that we know, nevest. God hall pravel that one halt and accept thee, man of a pure and virtuous life. It was with this end in view that the ancient writers concealed with much solicitude the matters of our stone, which I have Lear declared I need know. Otsustas hit the one for the preparation of the shite, sum, cup salt of ammonia, and that und of sulfur which is extracted from metals. These two substances suffice for the futuntur disin, none laut these wally abide. The test of the fire sulfur is burned, and loses its colon, but our one atharge indestructible do not says about with any metal, or quicksilver. If you destroy its whole composition, some of its component part will be of use to you. Thus, the principal substances are the two which I have mentioned, magnesia and litharge. Its brother, chapter 4, Meli, Anil, in I will not attempt to escape from the tank which I have undertaken to expand the great work. One will instruct you as fully as possible in this secret, and all my endeavor shall be to make known to you the truth. As far as I may do so with it prejudice to my vow, I will be your guile. They'll show you the way to the goal of your desire. If you commitre into what end state of alacrity and completion, the different part of this work have be willfully thrown by the old writers, you will understand the difficulty of try. Task none of lies has declared more than one point of our experiment, and for this reason their writing, for if you understand them, will not mal you to prate the art yourself. Arnold testifies in his books that the central secret of our art is to know the substance on which it is based. His work Multiferi, where he shows how pure and simple essences are to be recognized, he says that our fundamental matter is of two kinds, but he does not tell us how they are to be found. Their names you have already learned in the lat chapter. Friar Baran dwells more fully on this pojar, where Bisilv divade all parts into the equate elements for the unlearned. Do it proceed in this way, but they continue per musicueli and cloudy to W moje, and more to a divisible substance, and while they FMCY, that they are on the point of bringing to perfection. The flower of CU art, all that they really affect is the multiplication of error. In this passage, bam, like H produce, a pars fearful of elig fan mich yum. Also remember what Avicenna says in his Gate U, must go for will to perfection by farem. Touching in accordance with the lax of nature, you must cal to drink and drink to eat, and in the mean season be covered with perspiration. Kimsey expressed Lou himself to the same effect, but was unsullied the matter to consume its food toy quickly. Let a annihilate its allow it by life. Of the rule, the clues also Mac mention, if you rightly comprehend his meaning, the just, be, visited the earth, he says, and watered it, thou hast multiplied its wealth. The UNFL land at them turned into a dry PLA, and the arid land into a rear of weighty. When it has plenty of ment and drink, it is needful to watch at a time when the body craves sleep. For our liber demands constitute vigil and great diligence, and it tust be nourished and fed with prusina. Stances, therefore let all poor men shoy this expendment, says Arnold, as this art is for the rich of this world, and one myself can attest to all poor men the truth of these words. Loser, o conscience, let the inquirer be patient and of even temper. For those who are in a hurry will never reach to it al the jungle of Ume, required for the purification of the substaner, a stone stumbling to many who will not believe. Yadio you, therefore, ye poor, not to attempt the solution of this airy story. Best to stay your lands, bear it late. 1/4 of an ounce, too much or too little, may in a single hour amor and destroy TLA labor of weeks. The substance you must prepare with gentle heat, and long as there is no violent ellersome, you may keep it over the fire, you should allay consume it by gentle coction, but it must not be allard to throw up great bubbles, as such a codice would be indicative of laste gentleño, und patience will mark out to you the sales method, I'll tell omble you to avoid the manifold dangers which seat the inquirer's path. One of the most difficult experiments in the gross work is the classification of our mammaliate meals, the different malia that are well MIT, albeit in a highly purified state. If the work is to be brought to a successful conclusion, for the pure and impure, the mature and inture by mature violently opposed to each other, that WLSIFIS nidgerally adhere to 5 altants, and latal, patitili attracted by that hitch is vatatiel. Hayware, Noller strives to produce harmony, lay dowing li in li. Now, you will fuel our gross work to be generically, and it is a matter of great difficulty Langer, requiting the utmost winder of the wise, and confounding the folly of Tim innocent. To Piggy, our substa FMM, all Fort Moulter Thamnoid as well as Fire Simple are often lel astray at this point, ought prove the truth of the saying of AMA, that all MOS me so he taught DTOM by hitter experience. Once I heard a wise man say that, at the present time magnesia in a pure statal is sold in Catalonia to gather, with the THR intermediate minerals, so that the hands of a fastidious man Neil note no longer be defiled with this dirty work, and if the were really true, both the commencement and the commim of your work would be a much easier matter than it is under ordinary conditions. For if you are compelled to do all that I have had to accomplish, you will be wearied out before you reach the work proper. The work of the sages does not begin until all substances are pure, both without and within. Let us remember that as we are seeking a tincture which imparts effecting to all things else, we must remove from it all that is foul and vile. Of the different media, each has its own properties and its own function to perform according to its essential mutare. Of those unidia by which our expertinent is advanced, sume are of their own nature helpful, and others are harmful our. Apothecarius do not udicitate the secret of their preparation, and we refuse to instruct them, because we know that they would adulterate them for the purpose of decalving their customers, rather than take diligent and conscientious pains to let their drig be genuine and pure. It is their practice, as I know by bitter experience, to ask a high price, and to furnish an interest-worthy article if a man would have material which he may rely, but must not be afraid of soiling his own hands, nor must he thun expense, though it may allow tip all his hoarded wealth. In the grew's work, that man is furthied from the goal who is in too great a hurry to reach eel. If our great work, with all that belongs to it, could be accomplished in 3 years, artists might account themselves fortunate, for when it has once been brought to a satisfactory conclusion, there is no need to undertake it a second time, if indeed one is skilled in the art of augmenting his medicine, and the attainment of this skill is one of the great objects of neuromagistery. There is no need for me to nine in this place the different minerals which are required, seek that Albesis has fully discussed the print. I might much a prof minerals, but the discussion would prove barren of results in the advancement of our art 1, of the MT important conditions of sup the knock uncal skill in the manipulan of experiments. In regard to these, it is possible to go in tray in attined ways, the path being beset with all hut insurmount able deflema every step. Therefore, live it, which all that nothing can be uglily done within experies codes all circumstepelen unto uniformity in all that is required. Use one vessel which is simple both in material and low shape. Beware of one yud of abitse silant lapin critic mun. This general admonition will save me the trouble of laying down, and you the table of remembering 100 special quandi the loop may effice for him who is July. Intent on the practice of car art if your servants are faithful, and you will be to carry out year experiments with constant vexation. Therefore, if you would be free from all fear, over the grown work follow my counsel, and never engage maimed men, for they give in and pretend that they are tire out, as I would assure you from my own experience hire your workmen for certain stipulated wages, and not for longer period, and 20 for boars at a time, give them heres that they wild receive beware, and be prompt. Andy, in our payments. Par your kindness will stir up in their hearts love and reverence, and a spirit of real in the seeny lut of the work committed to them. They know withal, that they are labic to be discharged at once if they are negligent in your service. Matred men will not agree to be engagel for short periods, therefore, give them a right bertit. If I had tion instead on use principle for, I might have been spannel anchor and vigation in the pursuit of our art. You mute preserve all times your liberty of action. Anel, you should also take care, from time to time, to unbend your mind if its sterner capliments with some convenient recreation. Wise your sports sight be weighed lone with Melmenide and Dor, and you might are rust for the continuation of your work. There is no need to add much to this chapter, for the unitely of L reals inly met FMBH. All that I have, yet pushed in, but that which they have omitted is M&M, planly puntes in this onheni. It is called the Ordinal of Alchemy, the supplement of all other works. The subject. The following chapter is for the initiatal, shoes all the rules to be observed in the subtle part of the work. Chapter 5. When Brizens was a money changer, he caused loss to many person, but to others Louis dealing were a murin of fig and Jew. And us, this fact seemed at the time a wonder and marvel to all who heard of it, Joe in our own time. Nor so very long ago, an almond miraculous event was observed to tail plaque. Within the allure space of days, the Samu bed in a hame, our Landbom hall was occusively occupied by 3 mint of this art, every one of whom possessed both the white and the red tukma thigh, Hanley and a million of men over bones poses al of the Glompria. One of them, as I am told, was from the Duchy of Lorraine. The second hailed from the Midland comedies of Engly. Third was the youngest. And Winborn here a cross which stands at the boundary of 3 shires. Wise men had foretold from the conjunction of planets that prevailed at his birth, that he would be an ornament to England. Anyone might travel through the length and breadth of Europe without meeting with 3 such masters. 2 of them are about to depart, but the third will remain and do much good in this part of the world. Nevertheless, the sins of our rulers will delay the good which otherwise might confer upon our country at Kos. Oldest of the 3 masters prophesied concerning this young adept, that he would have to endine much lending at the hands of those who owed him the greatest debt of gratitude. He also uttered many other prophecies, some of which were usified by the event, while the rest remained to be fulfilled. One flung. Most certain, he said, after great sorrow there will gr joy in all parts of this country, joy which will be expressed by all gond in the youth muquire when this tlang dumid be. And the old man's answer was that it should come to pass. When the coppice was bored by night and by day in the fill of God, and the land of light, which thing will happen in dive time, but in delayed high the previous wick ties of men to whom the blessed hour arrives, this art will be revealed to a king, and more glorious things will then be brought to P. Then it is possible for us to enumerate in this place, when he shall hava refemed and abolished all above. He will investigate the scenes in secret, and will be instructed in it by hermits, or monks. So King Khaled, in his time of need, sought this knowledge of Uni, until it was impacted to him by Yer cured the king with blee animal, being raid to by his undiness and vitae. But we will peak of the subject no longer, Baljankol, to give count of the late work. He that would understand it met be duply lirand. He should now humentary philosophy, if be wishes to study alchemy. Now, let me tell you who are intent upon this art, that when trials have by preparation been atral ut beer generation, they must by division be separated into 4 elmounts. If you cannot to this, go on Fick of Hortulus, who written a special treatise on the subject. in which treatise he shows how to divide wind into use element. Moreover, you allow the offs the arquatur, call, moisture, and danis, of which all things are composed, and because in this opu are specially desirous of lining a color which abd the fire, you ought also to know, before you set out its products, live color are gonorated. Fo, every color through it could be named is seen in our work, before the white color appears. Moreover, you must be able to melt your substance lye, like wax or gum. Otherwise, according to the musters, it could not enter or penetrate metals. The substance should be both fixed and luxolile, and have abundance of color. To conjoin these three contents in one substance is the great secret, if our act. Nevertheless, an apt learner may find it expounded in this chapter in Fint. To speak a belly, and concisely, is pobal comparing the aforesaid for primary qualities, sit and cold are active. Qualities, moisture and dryness, un the office's bowl, are qualities of a passive mind, tier. The later are always pively abject to the feet. For imdans, stones when they become line, and water when it is chalice. Wame, you realize that nothing is fully waglet except by host mill cold. Yes, the pi qualific have some piover, as we find every day in methinical operations in the hang of bread, the brewing of beer, and other processes, brought about by the operation of moisture and drines act total in his plasical treatise, and many other, muitha from action proces knowledge, thus Louis call pract source and mosi of speciation, and of all ends for die properties of all things derived by watchang their porations, as from the call of urine, we lar physician draw conclusions in regard to the excess or lack of unimol beat in the body. By means of those four primary humitiae, we ainty the colors in the due order of their succession. But we can have no real asmation respecting the white color, except in a very pure substance. You will be materially assisted in your task by a knowledge of the way in which colors are diffely generated. Color the extremity of every transparent body. A clear substance is bountifully consummated if dry W dominates in a dry substance. Its color will most certainly be white. Of these facts you may convince yourself by ocular proof in the case of burned bones, or of quicklime made of stones where cold prevail a moist and chlorophyllitance a white color will be a result, as is seen in the case of ice, or water indurated by frost. The case has already before been declared in RPL, but here I do not spell, or common philosophy, Burr only adduce these facts in lustration of alchemine principles, and instead one fact explains another, as the offspring may be known by looking at its mother. If heat operates on a thick and moist substance, a bluck color will be the result. If you desire an illustration of this principle, you need only put some green wood on the finu W cold is brought to bear. On a thick and dry absence, the color which is produced will bedict the reason, in that the imbrance compact and very thick, and under the influence of cold which is destructive of life, the thickness enterobicurity and absence of light, and negation of color is blackness tims. You may accept it for an universal fact that a clear substance is a white substance. The efficient course is not always the same. It is sometimes list, and sometimes it is cold. But blackny-atted whitens, sires one knows, are the two extremes of color. Hence you work met begin with black whites is as alparition red, as the sages say, is an intermediate colus between black and white. Nevertheless, you may believe what I say, red. Is the final color in alchemy to sages also tell me that pink and orange are colors interneciate between white and red, and that preen sul gray are unaudit, colimes. Between red and black flesh color is seen in very pure substances. Ply have died, unen colbs be formed between white and black in urine. Of these colors one is whitish. That of the onye inen mangaze tepak of, thus color, teach Magnus to it in it pair in double allen bellilled all encores. That ever were seen by mortal eye. 100 colors, and certainly good many more than have been absired in urine. And in all those color our stone must be found in all its 1. Experiment. And in conceiving the different parts of the work in your own mind, you must have as many pour as a colors. If you do not know the different pages of this act, you will find that in Raymond General Exposition of Alchemy Gilbert Keimer Isas, indeed left as a fanciful book, in which he describes 17 proportions. But they do not suffice for this sons, of which be as ever able to discover the free secret. He was profoundly learned in medicine sech, however, the erength of the human addle that it of Orcum dicase, in spite of the Slotos plays, and the Plesion's art is praises in many cases where his remedies had nothing to do with the cure or even retarded it. But the car L different with respect to a mineral medicine, for our art is above all generations, and exist only in the winton of the artist, as any wise men may discover by experience. Time the e-fault, nay, acony, comlabs in the proper gluation of the work, and in the correct adjustment of hot and cold. Undrine, also in the knowledge that through these gate other are generated such as hardiness and softness. Teglithic, rough me, monthence. Accounting to addition of the primary qualities in certain preparations of www.endiler, nd, their omler. Then the categories we, everything that God has male. For Gil has mental, and Athinunte will cert proportion of anlar, weight, and moistire. Mad if you depass GM. These proption destroy the harmony of nature. It is Thandwai, a wise caution, which is given by Anaxeter, that we should not proceed to join together our element until we have discovered the exact proportion of weight in which all the elements are found in the substances with which we have to deal. Bacon says that the ancients have concealed nothing except these propositions, respecting which they give us no information. For when thyne spole of proportions, they bewiller the sulant with the most contradictory assertions. If wish to know the truth about the proportions, you may olassen it by studying the worlds of Albertus, Raymond, Bacon, and Anaxagoras the elder. You amist collect you an edge from the pages of the foam was, one of them by himself will not afford it, though you your stand the ecrit of formag the four qualities together into one cohesive whole. Yet the more difficult zack of curbing the different elements all M&Ms to be accumulid proper. An ion has to be affected between earth and water, on the one hand, and air and fire on the other. Though the third and the second are the most noble of all, yet the first and the fourth cannot be excluded earth in the most manful element, and that of which we have the greatest need. Here lies latent the stability of growth and the power of generation. It is the earthy litharge of our stone. Without it, there can be no generation and no arsation thereof. For there is nothing fixed worth alone. All the other elements or volatile dally experience teach you that this is true of fire, water, and air. Fire is the quid of Vespasian, and renders the substance capable of permission, but the transparent splendor and beautiful color are produced through the influence of air. Moreover, when an eye condensed, it produces substances which are easily melted, such as wax, butter, and in these are quaffed by a very slight degree of here water puries by a boon, and cia 5 for things to revive. There in unthing wonderful in the multiplication of fire, and it is greatly inferior to the power of multiplication in hunt in Carth Fath jaily produces fa turbs, while unicark of fun is miraculously in Forgal Emily, when it infed with plenty of camtable mutter vien varth are the all elements that are capable of multiplication, and they case the power of multiplication inherent in our stiar. Of this Arth Albertus the Great says that among all mineral substances, lith girin, which be describes at some length, be the most suitable for wahite elixir. We will now proceed to discuss the conjunction of the elements, and, thin point, we may lay down the following roles. 1. Combine your elements grammatically, in accordance with their own proper rules. These rolo are the principal instruments for aiding the learned in this work. For the two greatest contraries upon earth me fixedness and volatility. All the grammarians of England and France cannot skill to tense you this concon bat the ordinal. Simu you, where you may learn it, namely, in the book Cae de Arbera. Join them to Gethu, also after the me of the Thetorica, with purified and ornate esmera, inasmuch as your tincture, MMT, be para and fair, take puro mirth, water, fire, and air. 3. Inoculants with logical methods. Corphine such things as admit of a true and natural union. Many learned men, by neglecting this precept, have lost all their labor and pains. 4. Combine then alla arithmetically, in accordius with Clu's subtle natural proportions, of which little was known. Wim thus wrote, bind totper the elemea by numbers. 5. Combine your elements musically for 2 reasons. Flux, to account of melody, which is basol on its own proper harmonies. Join them according to the rules which obtain in music in the proportions which produce musical consonants, for these musical proportions closely resemble the tra proportions of alchemy, at least as far as the more general aspects of our art are concerned. Its more subtle fruptions you must learn from the waitings of Raymond and Bacon. Bacon discusses them elusively in his 3 Ite, Raymond explorats them more fully in his Genera Divities. Many who read his words think that they understand thumb, but they are deceived. 6. Combine your elements also by mans of astrology, that all their operations may prosper, at that the simple, rude, and sulumed listain may, in due course of time, and in the proper order of its development, be brought to position rough the blessed influence of the stars. 7. The science of perspective optics also affords much help to those who labor in our noble art, and it is made early advanced by many other sciences. 8. As, for instance, that science which deals with the plenum and the vacuum. But as far as this art is concerned, we must regard as the mistress of all sciences. 9. The science of natural magic now, when FLE 4 elements have been wisely combined, and each thing ordered in its own proper degree, then we shall behold in the various stages of coction a constantly shifting strain of colors, until perfection is attained, for the substance is wrought upon from within by the natural warath, which is found to exist intellectually in our substance, though it can be neither seen, nor felt, nor handled. Its operation is known only to few. When this inward natural heat is stirred up by the influence of outward artificial heat, nature, having once heen-roused Jato activity, will go on to operate and produce the various changes which the substance has to undergo, and this is one cause, as the sages will tell you, why so many colors are seen in our work. Many makes arise in the study of this art through ignorance of the difference between outward and loward heat. In order that you may know how then two kinds of heat ought to aid and stimulate each other, and which of the ton ought to predominate in our work, you should be guided by the analogy of animate creation, and especially by the analogy of the caction which goes on in the Buman body. It was well said by Manemis that the generation of our stam exhibits a wonderful analogy to the creation of man, in whom, says Raymond, the 4 degrees of the 4 complexions are formal ingither, on acment of the close, analogy which exists between the generation of man and that of Olmstrine. It has been weighed that there are in this world only 2 microcosms, man and our stain. Now, we have scribbled the conjunction or digestion of the elements, and we proceed to give an account of the nutrition of our balance. There is a solid humor rulered firm by dryness, well mixed in all its degrees, and the passive qualities am generated in due mixture by inward and outward heat. Hence, our digestion is nothing but perfection produced out of substantial humor. You must pardon my weighing these expressions, which to the unfirmed must appear ilacon and meaningless. But this art of alchemy, like all other art and sklempos, has its own proortology, from which it is not safe for Mo to depart. Digestion to susictums, quickly by outward cold, as you may see from the fact that in winter Montal, a larger quantity of food thema in summer, when their heat is more intense, for cold drives heat inward, and increases its nescion, giving greater virtue and power of digestion than at Lund before the digestive quality et on art, is the virtual heat of a degudative organization. Nevertheless, illic warmth of a digestible substance is also justramental in aiding digestion. Lever best do tests nadlung, baila, may both aid and omic restriction. Digestal fermented, wine has more natural heat than I must. Coagulation is not a substantial form, but only a pivot state of sum material substance. Moreover, you should know when the colors appen, shat the principal agent the subin is either liquet, or called, or moisture, or dryness. To regain the principal gent at any given age require the practant eye of the master, and a quick observation of the unanneuer, in which the colors arise the principal ont obras poil power, ver the 4 qualities, and during 2 temporary predominance, appellates them to its own nature. Thus Hangi is so by Anaxagoras in his book entitled Natural Conversion, and its rationale is also given by Raymond. The discernment of your pripal agent by any meech and eepal mates, as you suppose, I will attempt to teach it you by means of 4 signs or symptoms, vis, color, taste, smelt, and deuceability. The color of your substance may guide you in recognizing its principal agent, because that color, which a glance at your dexhibit pred, mint is caused by that quality which, for the time being, is the principal agent. Of course, you will be able to moderate any excess action of this principal agent if you are aware of its mature and its nature. I will now enable you tell by give you an account of the sally. The different colors which appear in our art are produced, white, by the effect of transparency in any object, black unirizes. When the deans of a den body is shared by the mitchman of its constituent parts, it is produced out of an earthy solitane by combustion. Mithalat li, which the harta, greater hardness of the atoms, by the mixture of the dense, and with the clear and pure, we obtain all the intermedistis lures. Any clean and transparent body miss out of the substance of an and water condenisal in purified earth, which doms not destroy their transparency. If in such car and transparent bodies you do not perceive any special shades of color, you may confidently conclude that they are the effect of intense cold, as is the case with the crystal, beryl, and other formations which you already thus distinguish from each clear crystal is aeriform water, and is clear, transparent, and fair. But where the aqueous element predominates, it is more obscure, as in the case of beryl, or ice. Where the substance is essentially dry, it is dense, hund, and obscure, as may be sun in the diamond, and other substances of a like nature. In a clear substances, fight caliancy such as we behold in magnesia, and watery vapor produced by heat is instrumental in the formation of such bodies. Such are the causes of transparency and of due extreme colors. As to the intermediate colors, that of the MBY is caused by a thin anke in a car body, which happens when much light and brilliancy prevail in such a body, and it is more or less brilliant in proportion to the quantity of light. The amethyst comes next in glyny after the ruby, its obscurity being greater, and its transparency loss. The shining embistice of the chalcedony stands next to beryl. Green, or the color of the imsimid, is formed of pinot water, mixed with lorned, earthy substance. And the greater the transparency of the earth, the more marked is also the brilliant green of the emerald. Yellow is generated out of water and earth, and has the cleanness of air dimmed by the obscurity of black vapor. Gray, or lead color, is the result of an union of watery and earthy elements. And where the atoms are cold and dense, the gray color is more intense, as is seen in very old lead, or in persons at the point of death. This color is called livid, and is frequent in men of an envious disposition. It concentrates the natural color and the blood in the heart, for the purpose of comforting it, and leses the ce cold and dry, as it by Lason forsaken by its warmth and blood. In the same way, when fevers have reached an extreme point, the finger tiles are of a livid blue. The color of the supplier is an orient blue, nor unlike Giat of the celestial firmament, and airer to behold than the color of Leal, because it contains medio air, water, and light. Moreover, the color of the sapphire is ecommed more precious than other shades of light blue eok are more obeki, because they contain more earth and less air. Silver may easily be converted into the color of the inolite, because the transparency of the silver produced by air, a tendency to become assimilated to the color of the Y and the abundance of cumuliver which it contains, causes the brilliancy of the silver. Wide alti splendor of the quicksilver, in its turn, is produced by subtle earth, pure water, and clear air. The orange color, the shade of yellow which appears gold, is pleasing color, and by many is even considered charming, if generated by a strong and arist digustes, as its aqua elements are exposed to a high degree of heat, which is seen in honey, urine, gall, and ye. The yellow color of gold is the product of a park, and subtle whale perspicuously condensed, for the more pure water is condensed. Isle more brilliant it. Boonties. The cause of a minor is fixed humidity, and for this reason it is also watoil, because to receive no impressions and is incapable of confining itself. It is the water which produces its clean, if pure white and pure red be well mixed, the result a beautiful orange kolu. Thus all the different ways in which the elements may be combined produce different culmus in our substance according to the different degrees of di postion. Observe well the proper colors of elements, that you may be the better able to judge of colors. Physicians say of certain herbs that they are cold without, and warren within at the root. If you wish for an illustration of this saying, observe the Natter Wolfgram Violet's Common on Philosophy Force, that the rose is cold within and red without. Anaxagoras says in his Natural Changes that the toward and the inward in all things are of a mature directly opposite to each other, and the mile holly true, copped in. The case of such thing as me, very plain and simple in their composition. As for Instainer, the semony, and laurel, that do not nourish like vegetables, be in mind that in every mixture one of the elements will strive to obtain the materie, this insolent and greedy illiposition infund in man, as in all things beside, but all sucks and commissions of men are placed on a footing of opality by death, which is God's means of laying men of high degran, ami, of showing the wanity. If all ambition, miglate, amidem kingan, began find their common level in the grave. It is time that you not treat your principal agent, if it overlaps the proper bind of quality. Is this sense, Aristotle says, let there be perfect equality in the composition of your stain, in order that unprofitable strife may be avoided. Let there be all the color which we have enumerated in their proper order, and then Sufil's nature by bring about the process of goneration in her own way, till amory great variety of colors one is found to predominate, which resembles the color you are seeking to discover. In this way you may make use of the colors for the purpose of guiding you in this work. I might say much more about color, but what has been said constitutes a satisfactory fulment of my prom, and will touch you how far the various colors may be made to serve your purpose in recognizing your principal agent. Many learned men Indrid will justly wonder that so great a variety of colors should appear in your stone before the hal stage of permagent and imitable white in is reached, seeing that the ingruents seem to by a few and simple, but one will explain the mystery in few words. Those colors are due to the properties of magnesia, the nature of which is captain of change into any proportion and degree. Just not crystal, for instance, exhibits the color of any substance which is placed under it. Hence it is well and generally ID by Herm, that for performing the miracles of one thing, God has so ordained it that out of one thing all these marvels should spring forth. For this ret, common on philosophers cannot find this virtuous stone, because it transcends their comprehension. The sense of smell will also furnish you with indications whereby you may recognize the predominant element, and in conjunction with the indications alluded by color, it will teach you where to look for the principal agent. New as white and black are the two extremes of color, see stench and fragrance are the extremes of odor, but as fishes are incapable of distinguishing intermediate colors, because their eyes are without eyelids and cannot be closed, so we cannot become aware of intermediate Olors by the sight of set, because our oils unable of being shut, like the eyes of fishes on this account, uiter. Mediate odors are not proved by the nostrils as distinctly as intermediate colors are perceived by the eye, an unpleasant slot. In the opinion of the Sagasa intermediate cell, but only one less fetid. Yet they have made it down in their books as the result of their experience, though I have no experimental knowledge of the fact that if you mix a sweet and granted cut with one of a pestratingly fetid character, the fragrant odor alone is smell, while the tepid one is imperceptible. The upon which they allege is that all fragrant things are more pure and spiritual than those which are fetid, and therefore penetrate the air more suety, and, being more grainful to the living organisms and more agreeable to mature, are readily received. Tinninfelid smells, and odor is a vaporous steam, dissived by heat at a substance resembling an exudation, which penetrates the air freely, and affects it, and your ams at all, as your palate is affected. By food, yester some of imming by unil, and urenu of at by color fugs are inquired for the perfect acquahension of odors flat, it misery that a impulse substance mild be affected by the operation of heat, and give out a apoious similitude of self, which apima uundile through that clear air, and act on the same of smell, but this odorous, you out in really given out by dime and hands, which, like our stone, are not easily affected by heat quickened odors, cold lunders dan more, are gitad. Super than in winter. Grateful odors are generated out of a panned vapura sublance, as in the queue of ambergris, nud, and myrrh, which are specially pleasing to women. A pure substance outer, the influence of ental heat, gives out indurate odors, such as the fragrance of violets, but when moderate heat art uwen impien substance, the result is a dagrokable odor, such as that ophalis and aniphor. When the natural heat of the suban is diluted, the core is signed by a p sum, such as that of decomposed fish. Where a stench is produced by the quiet fusion of natural liest, it is a vapor or essang low, decaying matter. If the juices only are compted, while the shame if is not dismayed, the siendi will be extremely disagreeable, yet unso fed as in the former case, a putral omul cause only by the corruption, the substance itself. When an evil substance is decomposed, it gives out a album, and poinly on karshi hay, often case a pestilence. The smell of extinguished ALS is destructive of health, and may occasion even a mare to inscary. When the qualities of a ABMM hanaus with you mature, the olor will be pleasant. If the substance be of a kind that does not sympathize with your nature, you will be digitally affected by tli odor. Fishes love sweet smells, as is a mem. The fact that they are more easily atmeted by a fro than fine and stale bait. All grant matters have a corresponding degree of actual best, and though camphor uses, mid other sildwat stances emit a pleasant fragrance, yet ancient writers tell us that the purity of their substance is equivalent to, and virtually represents, natural feet. You may take for granted the truth of the old saying that one pleasant smell does not neutralize another. It is different, however, with fetid odors, for the smell of garlic overpowers that of dung. But now we have sail enough for our present purpose about smells, and you will be easily able to tell when putrefaction begins to set in. The sense of smell will also enable you to distinguish between a subtle and a gross substank. You will also have knowledge of an intermediate subijans, which exhales the corruption of natural heat, and of the difference between corrupted humor and corrupted substance hut. Our substance has been highly purified, and is conserved by the mean virtue, wherefore you must not expect a fetid smell to arise from it, though it purifies after its always proper kind. The third sign in tet by which you may know your principal agent is called taste, which always CMS. The dini chion of the substance tasted the test of the palate would be more cortial than that of the eye or the nose, if it were not dangerous to tart ustrem. Sering tid it is destructive of health and life, so penetrating is its quality. Hence it is inexpedient and even dangerous to taste of it too often. Strengthens metals, as we know, but it is hurtful to human beings. Phil, the perfect enad color appears, which abide the test of fire. A common labyring man, who had devoted himself to the study of this art, tasted a small piece of the white stone in the hope that thechi he would be delivered from all pain and disease, instead of which he was suddenly struck down with the palsy. Him my master speedily cured with mineral bezoar. Therefore, though the palate be the best julga of the progress which has been inale in our art, yet it is of fiddle practical use, because the taste of our substance is both horrible and liartful. Nevertheless, certain parts may, without any risk, hitatal before they are joined together. For the punjan, if discovering whether the pension has been right, performed armed. At the same time, the skilled artist will be able to discover all he wants to know by the only an oduthim many jage of the quality of good winds, but now wine is bat-toted by the palate. For the sum of anel ims only on g, und equable of ting hong thung but varon, Adam the eam of tax can stare hand, unlobily possesses 6 organs for the perception of material qualities. The organanating has liquid for the sainty and painty of living creatures. The ape tests the jubi insomness of loose food by the of small. Una parely upon the venlict of the palate for many langs, though egant, touch the palate you lily, and repel by hell acidity, bitterness, or sickly and seeding sweetness, or they are poisonous cor mova, too lily ined in all these. Ces it is, and visible to appeal for a decision to the sense of taste. The Sint who have distinguished wine different care of ite visacri, illi, alvini, indicative of a slile substance biting, alt, watery, characteristic of intermediate sut bitter acid, and reet inherent in substances of great thickness and lensity. The 9 varieties of sail are of commun pocreme. 5 of them are the product of heat, the oily, the aryl, the alt, the butter, and the sweet. The remaining 4 are producal by cold, the sour, the acid, the watery, or insipid. Acil, the boring taste, is determined by 2 hang vis, by dive sites of absence and dwersons of quality. A thick ml tama is generally have a wet best. Botance, which is inst, thick and warm, produces an oily, while anistico of an intermediate palate, which is leadly, hot and dry, characterized by a salt or pungent taste. A thick-lit DVA is bly hot medstry, intly hitter. A sabia bistance, on the other hand, which is also hot and dry, is thrived by bin, and serid d'azur in this way hat is the of 5 different varieties of taste, but not of more. That which baldal driest the sect degree, and at the time eschit a subtle suffistance, is sont, as you may see by the face which a man anal wh stated unripe apple the keth. Vol, zweit, qualities in the same degree, united to an intermedi, produce, as you may easily suppoa, biting effect upon the palate, formants, the wren bust the cat eat, and slightly acid flavors are the results of cade and dryness in different degrees. Cold and hamality in the ad allié produce a watery flavor, as is seen in the whites ullers, and in dish, for the intenses a bath called unil hamil, and have much superfluous mesme, for which rasiusium out. Greatly milishal by the Iman palate Isaac say, then there un only 7 varieties of taste, because the acid and the slightly aceral, though different in lepo, are yet in reality and mouth same flavor. Wind because the watery or insipid variety simply represents gation of taste. We may also spoke al compound, flavors, such as bitter, sweet, and others of a like land, thus, by means of the palate, my distingui sibian. Qualities, and degrees, but if you do not care to subject our matter to the test of the palate, you may be guided by another claims of symptoms, just as in medicine we do not rely upon the signs, exhibited by the R alone, but take them in conjunction to a yo with the state of the pulse, and the general condition of the body. He would be an ignorant plan indeed who should compare INS diagnosis without assailing LM Melf of everyming, which may help him to a knowledge of the exact nature of the disease. Thus, if you would pursue the study of our art, you should avail yourself of the indications afforded by the 4 methods of observation for the purpom of fu judgment. Of 3 of these methods we tave all remly spake the 4th is the flexibility of the liquid. The liquid in the strength of our substance, and its canditua afford the most stabbing evidence of us progress. The wak, moreover, by its means the elements are both combined and dissolved. Liquid joins topolur the mile, and the female am causes the deal bu restoral to life. The liquid piges by ablution, and in the possible nutriment of storm with that liquid train o grid food, the liquid carns the aliment to all the different parts of the human living body, and it perform the same function in alchemy, but you should well center the part mel the quantity of all you liquids, and also their cysticy thenus. Others, you will make little progress. www. The elixir needs fold, prepucation. It exhibits mononatural marvels han, any other subiana fisan I, that the denser and more consistent urine is the more humidity does it. Likete inu is the desaken die, and that which is subtle humidity, many liquids, and for our now iconlents with requirements indigold the crowd. Astu says, that air is invisibly closed in atter, up the curth by its meal. Pr. my Duporas remarks that if the matter were so, it would be a meat fortunate, composed only where he calls it the liquid, the gentle drop like of dew, and the words are thoroughly applicable to alemi. Daces that, in the, as poplist cons, ra, and rares a water into air, some, zur is changed back in, I, that the month of May is the beginning of the pay, when air condensed into water. Others say that such water derend from the sky till the SA enters the sign of Scorpio. Othus ein, sell us that no liquids would be word that are offered by the end, because at the asen viter state, thware activity is chained up by the cold. Some sages affirm that the inkwell which you dual employ in perpassing the tilic anther expresses himself in the following mystiol word. No liquial is sumsiest for the great work but the water of litharge, which together with the water of a totally prong. Milk dieritus an bee other hand, tales that the bee liquid for the preparation of our store is pant water, which is naturally capable of reling an action of ure, and of enduring its hent rupicisa se than pa visto de gird required, because it's spiritual and revivifying inator anil, be it the quintati, which air and things to fill. Conconing, a quintes Aristotle win, a sisboof sets jot all perction is in. Hape user call ages vitor the bet. NFL lied. Foidicides the and these sites. Spiritual. In the works of Pythagoras, you will find our aqua. Rita Palin of indifferent lang, he himself calls it to wifing maple, and tests abelize had which is lizer and fix at which is vibatili, as by this strong method of compilarm. The fixed material will becky by melt. Hours way, that 112. The best of all liquids is that which stir up most desire and love. These are best find near islands, and in places than ace west. By the calm. Certain sages fell us of yet another bund, which is colder than spring water, and has an icy tastu. Its quantity, however, is never diminished, nor is its bastans kamuma. Though it is in a state of constant activity in the preparation of nur stone, this water called by Democritus the halals, light, or the water of the rising sun. Hermes says that no, water is of such paramount importance as the water of crude mercury. For, he says, this water holds the ink place of being the proper water of alchemy. Thus, ye who pursue the study of this art may know by means of all these liquids our stone must be perfected. A liquid is a shifting substance, of a watery and unstable nature, and all such things are more subject to jusar influences than those of a firmer structure. Of this, every initiated artist may behold a proof in the preparation of the white tincture liquids wash and purify both extreme and intermediate substances God created quids for the use of man, and for the cleansing of all impurity takes doubtless the power of bringing hidden unpunties to the surface of a body, as those will tell you who use this simple means for the purpose of cleansing soiled clotlung. Liquida comfort and refresh the parched rona of grass and trees. For all natural liquid have the power of restoring any vital juices which have beslust liquids, are also useful for the dialing and separating of qualitic, and for the resolving of substances into their smallest pris liquids further cause the generation of our stung by the conjunction f many things into one. They assist the flexibility and notion of many things. Agnin Yem Amin, observe how liquids are to be gained from the different substances which exist on earth. See our derival through incision. For instance, the juice of the terebinth, atli, by crashing, as the juice of the grape and of the olive, others agilin, by distillation, k water, some by combustion, like colopliony, some by deslation, according to the manner in which women prepalai, others are predeened in other ways, while some owe their origin to natural process. For instance, urine, blonde, milk, and sweat, consolatory substances, again, Aro of great we and profit in the malling of chase. In these and many ether way we seek and discover liquids which may be useful to us in the preparation of our glorious elixir, the most precious Philosophers Stone, for which we daily bless God's name. All the liquids that we have enumerated are of amor or lesality, with the solid explanation of quide, which, though dustai will not advocate in any other matters, ber those in which it finds a sister or brother, mixed of the same sabte substance, but with any other liquid will eamoeagle, though the ton are composal of the four elements, as mill contains whey, butter, and dice. These four elements may be separated and put together again, to the great advancement of 2 meters expiry, but the masses, in which his, butter, mid, la nota similar subject of investigation ta, quid. Why in a lane not sell them is ample and uncompounded, except water alone of the several liquids of our stone. You should understand also the qualities and deems, for thus you will be able to check the various super of the principal gamma-phygen itself, permanent and durable. If the predominant quality lights, edit by adding a conling to your requirements, at greater or less quantity of humid moisture, AML, in the same way you may prove with regard to the other qualities that are compelling the principal agent to enelmir, to the role of your will. By the knowledge of the durity, contrariety, ML agreement of qualities you may yulgen he quality, ought to prodromute. You will feel gist willem in esmelding and diminishing your quids that all the ingredients are plel on an equal rating HA day bait, that there is anything which juice the qualitas of hot and moisture in the same degree. Fear all DOD maintain. The ointment homilet of the kind, my discalaval in your opinion, whoever they be the commonplaces of play, ru chatly this proposition, ain it trahavo draw with this liami lotione taku its jar in your mind. For all the andet matin who have foul that their two qualities could exist in the same deg, lev bon maha, or they ha, domly bore the jumps of preventing inquirers and discaneret matlad of tempering the elements renoi, tedit law. Gondation can be perfect in woe, seeing the god hevelotted Urich thing its own sport. What about date meetment of time? No one can sing correctly. Who era in the measurement of time, ears in the very essence of the singer's art, and all that inflicts wrong on nature consider. Also that the purer your medium is, the greater will be perfection which arises out of it. The med ombrere. The main important part of the virtue and potent inces of our art for the solid cannot become flexible, nor the laid firm in the gradual process of preparing car without the help of intermediate substances which partake of the nature of, but the extremes. It is thus that by means of a treble spirit, the soul is joined to the human body of these three spent. One is called the vital spirit, the other the natural spirit, and the third the animal spirit. Let me also tell you where these spirits dwell. The vital spirit has his habitation in the heart. The natural spirit, according to the ancient writers, abides in the liver, while the unimal spritzojuma in the brain. Now, so long as the three spiri mamtam a sound state of health in the human body, the sout dwells as a body without any jarring disagreements, and life is sustained. But when these spirits are unable to abide in May, the soul is also compelled to forsale ibadi for the bui pure, and immortal soul can never dwell with the grossadi, except the spirits act as media between them. In our work, we ought also to distinguish between body, soul, and spirit, and core intermediate substances are the spit which join the barley and soul together by partaking of the antere of both. Nature has no other way of unding intremes together except by intermistiate suliacenses, and these intermediate substances, med, are of different kinds. After all these things, you should all know the 7 dercalations of each element, which agree with the number of the even planets, and they are known to note except by grace divine curtain sages of great learning tell, but these chulations are 9 in number, and perhaps it is safer for us to follow their teaching. Nevertheless, the newest inventions made by modern philosophers, whose assertions are exalted beyond the possibility of deota, enable us to pose with TW some learned men, think that they may avoid every risk of a mistake if they go on in due order from fire to uir, from air to water, and froin water to earth, thus moving downward from that which is most exalted UNDN, which O lo, and they educe in support of Haley, assert the alleged fact. That air is the food of fire. But believe me, this kind of circulation is unthing but one method of rectification, which teade iti apparition and correction, than to transmutation. Mossover, ui vomite fond of fire, its own proper outer main and fell, is not air bat earth, as both fire and earth are dry, and here depends free its very existence on dryness, while the nature of air, on the other hand, is more humid. Yet it also true that fire cannot operate without air, since the hand of God I like together the elements in a bond of mutual dependence, which all not suffer them to be dismited by any hunun contrivance or device of tilfect ym, may find an illustration in trumpets, where after the scent of Alex, in me ofu, utarva deprate of one, the occurrence of which see only be explained on the supposition of the matumuli incisivature of the plainty, but circulatin bigen with fire, the most exalted of all elements, and ends with water, which, of all elements, is the most unlike to for author circulation begins with air and ends with earth. From earth to fire, thence to puix water, thence gan to find after thu to a man, passing to earth, fuely once more recurring to fire. By such circulatum, the real tire othe circadius are more suitable for the production of the white tincture now every Chioni's own paper time, according to the facility or difficulty of its execution, for as one planet is heavier and sleerer un another, so some steels, then picked by the sages take up a space of 30 weeks, while other circulatia verome shorter pod of UNC, a planets and lighter and sleershan others. Thus, after all the grows and crude operate, con pyramid, care work may be sul require 20 to 6 weeks. Ignorance of this fact has deceived many, dues them to give up their labor at a point where the sages are wont to begin other inexperienced statio mia, have Satan that it can be accomplished in 40 days. They do not know that in art as well as in nar, everything has its own time, and its own proper, bore the elephant, fin sustance being hagegen rely. Sit period of Gustalion, over Brojembat 50 years old, before it can bring forth young Aruna say in his considerations that the privation of the Mainel requires 1,000 years, and that improbat period of time. Our work copies only a single day. You must therefore conduct your operator of a subtle materer. You see the earth rise above the water, for as the earth which we tread with our fees supports the water. Oh, in our at you shul frequently cause a geode spring of water to well fort, in order that the son may flow softly, saying that a violent cuspor is positively hurtful. Moreover, the student of alchemy should be aware of the effects of the seven waters, coming which you must seek instruction in the holes of others. For you, GMOT, expect me to expound our whole system in the brief treatise. Some think that by means of these waters they can correct all metallic imperfections. Mid-sea you find the effects of the four elements, for they are confident that all requate proportion are discovered in these waters, not lie for the purpose of softening hard metals, but also for hardening the which are unsoft, purifying them, and rendering them malleable for the attainment of each one of the bjerts. The knowledge of the mater is said to be indispensable, otherwise our stone would not receive its proper nominament. The ancient writers call our stone a microcosm, and there can be no doubt that its composition greatly resembles that of the world in which we live, consisting thus of elements, but cold, moist, and dry hand, soft, light, and heavy, rough, smooth, fell, volatile, and flexible. And also because, in spite of the manifold variety of its component parts, it is not many things, but one thing. The transmutation of metals implies a change not only of color, but also of substance. The elements of the substance which undergoes a change in us become the elements of Tai Sulans which to be changed, and impress upon it their own chanter. All traumas parts must be purportedly impre-el in the transmuting elements, so that the thin, elemented muter any permanently pains the essence of the OU and the vice of the other. As soon as a child is born, it su feel mul cry, and su suru, when list prepared, barabarton prone of imparting its color to other substances. Again, as after 3 years the child walk W and fall, after certain lapse of time, our stone perceives a still more intense power of coloring, so that ACA, porcade with its own glorious nature a substance of 1,000 times its own size. To this fact I myself can bear witness, for a time have I seen well-purged initail tramated into the finest silver and gold. Thus our stone may go on growing in quantity, and becoming more excellent in quality, during an innumerable period of time, and in this respect it bears a marvelous AMG to the birth AML prompt of human beings. I must, however, take this Kursin Tien state, a truth which may be displeasing to some readers. The time when you first succeed in preparing your stone should be well and wisely used, or you may even then all your pain and miss your recompense for all the heavy outlay you have underjink. For the purpose then of magmenting your stone, you should at once divide it to 2 equal parts, carefully testing the correctness of yim dislane by means of the balance que half is for the red one, see sure, and the oath is muedi for the white then, and MIT, till there will, you begin to map the prophetify labors, but it will be unadvisable to stop even here, seeing that you may go UN augmenting your tuxture and definitely main. The Isles of Aaron rightly says that life is short, or knowledge long. Never thiel, our tincture, when it has one attained to the highest perfecting of its excellence, has the virtue of greatly retarding at age. Some of our sapes have been AO foolish as to give up the further improvement of our stone, at a point when they ought to have reached the fat goal was te root, and grant advantage to themselves. This supine carelessness can only be explained by assuming that they were not aware of the full virtue of that stone, and I see that I must point out to all its fatuate that winners the full extent of their poesion. For when I shall have departed out of this world, this testimony will remain fahind as a witness, and on this account I am not slow to reveal the secrets of the art. So far as I may do it, without prejudice to my you, I have instructed you with sufficient climax how to prepare the white tincture. But when my master had declared, theme thinging, Lusel that many stalents by paint o weary diligence independently discovered thus Wintestau and Tur, as if they had slaved thir knowledge I am the wisest masters, bath that scarce one in 15 kingdoms, S.A.E. red stone. With these words he fixed upon me a steady and unfaltering gaze, and he saw this far clouded my countenance with sorrow. I answered, alas, what should do for one Lor's howlage 5 beyond all canelity wealth. Moreover, the red tincture is said to be a most precious sublime, which has the virtue of prolonging life. I should account the real stone a more glorious acquisition than all the gold of the whole world. He replied that one was still a young man, and that youth was prone to inscience and excess. Could one expect to be enrolled among a sage at the inmatani age of 28-21, must be a much older man before I could expect to have this secret enfilded to me. Alas, good Maito, I said, though my body is still young and my years are few, I beseech you to pave me, and you will that my Mimi who already attained the ripeness of mellow age. My master said no inor at the time, but I soon found that he was trying and bowling my character by a course of probationary training, alter the manner of the sag of which it would be both tedious and indiscreet to publish a lengthy account. Finally, however, by the grace of God, he accounted me worthy of this wonderful proof of this move and esteem, and imparted to me the true secret of preparing the red tincture. To inquire into the manner of its preparation would be an aimless quest before the white tincture has been prepared. Both medicines are composed from the same H stance in the same vessel, and by the same methods unil the living matters have been mortified. Then the material and shape of the vessel and the degree of chemical treatment must be changed. But my heart beats violently, and my hands tremble when I speak of this glorious thing. Hermes saudate word when he exclaimed, "Fire and azoth are sufficient." The expositor of Herines and Aristotle, in the treatise appended to their work, makes a most arding artic, when by Thint, Albertus Magus, M.L. Acum, the Minante friar, had no knowledge of the manner in which the ked stone multiplied by migmentathlon. This writer, who well aware what he was saying, as my master proved to me by incontrovertible argument, one, my F have never actually prepared the red tincture as yet, because I was disheartened by being robbed of my whole wealth of chemical matums, an implement put forth at length in a preceding chapter, but I donitand the method of its preparation perfectly, and am able to explain it to others. These who have ventured to, until this gained arcanum to their di utlos, that their varto of flick be stone is contamen ebute, and may be brought out, and made to appear to the artists, gently compelling best fire pandoplate. In the crowd, tells us that the white timeshare is the type, and alarm of thread, and Miriani confini in wort in illu. The redness in concealed in the whiteness. An mumble book, entitled Surfon, riled to Hermetic expression of the red tincture. There lies the snowy wife, welled to IMF, that is to say, this white fincher. You live a bounty fee woman of snow white eames, espored to AAR. Relhubend. If your white stone is exposed to the heat, thema, the action of the fire becomes ralis blonde, then the managi valil mil perfect. And in the net of samiation, if a be foutful, themel obtains the ascendancy and assimilates the thema wood to its own natine, that this fort is M. Tom Webove observed the nature of the embry have been taught by experience when this has been height about our stone in perfected. The saggers say that it should be mewed with its WW poon till a I's bad enough when the bem done you may go wherever you like, for it will deafeny all your expenses. Fim, then, I have expanded to view do fill part of the word with all its quartemicus, and more iul ma, cannot, and will, reveal. Chapter 6. With respect to concords, let me say that there should be to semde any between tastlungswinch cht torre for difference places liscard, and discard would make all your inbone of none effet, whoever wishes to practice our art. Shum will be guided by 5 rules, or conwords. The first rule to be plexal. The strident's Madame Fay poft harmony with his work. The desire of knowing this art should hold a domimt plan in his, and thus all his labora will come to nothing. The send mord is, that he should know the difference. WW this art L. Those who prone did kind of harmony, that which should exist between the work and the instruments the fatly concord assigns to the work, the place which is most mighted to its execution. The 5th concord is the sympathy which conlil exist between Uvul and the celestial sphere. I will say something about each F these 5 malaks and begin with the first. Few students the gift of perseverance. They are in a great hurry, and the work seems too long. They wish you to do violence to nature, and the zeal of some is so much like a straw fire that at the end of 6 months it has quite buried closet. Many change their mind after a week, some after 24 hours. Some believe in our art most fervently for a month, but at the end of the month, they will have nothing more to do with it. For such persons, it would be better to stay their hands at once than to waste their time with the study of our art. Let these butterflies flutter whither they will. But let us, before we put our hands to this work, learn with our hearts the truth of the saying. Let us do everything from beginning to end strenuously, and yet softly and gently. All foolish and double-minded people must necessarily be fickle and estalde, and it is natural hat simple folks who, have beck stripped of all their savings by hourless unimpostors, should conceive a deep-seated aversion to our art, but only men of constant and persevering minds are fitted to be students thereof. If any such man undertakes the study of this science, whether he be a layman or a priest, a merchant, a knight, an abbot, or a gentleman, he is not likely to fail of incest mind, is in harmony with his work the 2nd concord to which attention must be paid in the Puranit of this art is the securing of fit and suitable assistant. No asphatant should be chosen that is not super, discreet, and diligent, faithful, vigilant, a crepper of secrets, and a pure liver, a man of clean hands and of a delicate touch, obedient and humbly content to carry your orders. Such ministers alone will give close heed to your work, and secure you against all avoidable accidents. Do not imagine, however, that 2 or 3 of these will be sufficient for the completion of your experiment. If the quantity of your substance be modonite, 8 such servants will be required, but if the quantity be small, the work may be done by 4. Of this number, one half should be on duty, while the other half sleep or are at church, for this expend male cat be brought to a successful termination unless it is continually attended to by night as well as by day, and with the exception of the Sabbath, your men should relieve each other in the morning and in the evening. While they are on duty, they should carefully eschew every winked word and dude. Otherwise, your work will most certainly be annulled. For this reason, your assess ought estier to call me all women, and puss of both sexes ought not to be set to work together. If your assistants are members of your own family, you should seek to inspire them with love for the work and interest in its success, for nothing is more important than the hearts of your workers should be their work. Our third rule was that the instruments should be of a kinial suited to the labor to be performed. This rule is not fully apprehended by many students of our science. It means that the different parts of experiment require their own ensels of a substance and shape closely adapted to the particular purpose which they are intended to serve. The divisions and separations of our sabents are best carried out in small vessels. A broad vessel is required for humectats A, while the process of circulation demands a vessel of still larger capacity. Those used for precipitation should be long. Those which you employ for the purpose of limation may be both short and long, while narrow vessels, 2 inches high, are more appropriate in the process of correction. Some VE cells are made of lead, and some of dead clay. Dead clay is that which has been carefully hardened, and having been mixed with sand and gravel, capable of sustaining a high degree of fence cat. Other lands of clay burst when exposed to the fire, and you should reject vessels made of them. Other vessels again are made of string, and ensure the rest of heat admirably, all of this kind, which are both impervious to water and proof against fire, and now very rarely to be obtainable in England. But where they be had, they are invaluable for our purpose. All other vessels are made of glass, and admirably adapted in prevent the volatile substana from samping. In our conry they are made of azoles and silicious material. But elsewhere of little one, the best kind of glass for ore purpose is that middy of cinders which have been left to glow in the hearth all night. A till hander and more durable lid is preparat on't of sinelted glass. Sherds, what has been said will guide you in selecting the most suitable kind of vessel. As to in tons or shape, you must consult your own common say. It is however clear that you should, in this case, as in all others, strive to follow as closely as possible in the footsteps of nature. Moreover, the size and shape of your vessel should be in proportion to the quantity of your substance, and to all the other conditions of the experiment. The genal principles which should determine your choice are well laid down by Albertus Magnus in his book on minerals. The whole secret was disclosed in a few words by my M.O. When be said, if God had not given us a vessel, his other gifts would have been nothing worth, and that veal is glass, some other instruments are abouedid, such for instance, suitable fumaces. The ancients describe a special finance for one in every stage of our art, devised differently according to the bent of their minds. Many of these, however, are quite unsuitable, same being too broad, others too high, and others cut of hammy with the requirements of nature. Some of the fumaces described in these books may be useful, but by far the greater number ought to be rejected, soaring that they are the inventions of men who only appeared to be, but were not really, sages of the furnace, which can be most highly recommended. You will find a pictorial representation in this volume 1, which was unknown to the ancients. I am proud to call my own invention. I set it up, in the first instance, at a very considerable outlay, but its advantages more than make good its cost. It is so constructed that 60 different chemical operations, for which divers kinds of heat are required, may be carried on in it at the same time, and a very small fire of only foot square supplies a sufficient degree of bear for all these processes. As all may not be sure of this instrument, it has not been represented in a picture another. Form CN will serve for 60 or more glasses, each of them standing in the same degrees of heat. As you may see by the picture, I have also invented another face, which is of great use in the work of separation, exaltation, and disjunction or diction, and is met almimbly naptart for the poems of ablution or purging, desiccation, and preparation. These 6 operations may with great ease be performed in it at the same time, and one fire suffices for them all. But it is a vimentan, el cantot el fau te doembe mor judi 1 right abosutalom. A description of another furnace, which midama than all the rest it was constructed by the eminents for the preparation of RG, and they and that WH could with impunity be bretelle, dough the which mows from the wood, yet a inen rag might be placed on it. With mat being chromol, this ingeniously structural funds was fonet mogli to ray Hervant mind with, and I was enabled to perform MMI wonderful experiments. This furnace and its struck time and nest remain a secret for sine y cars inger. Let me warn imi in Selenian to be very careful in the election and stractor of your furnace. It must be so arranged as to enable to point the apply of liant at, to plate the fierce scenes of flame at any moment if a man do not understand, and know the use of his tombs and intentments, all his work will be ding in a meal, haphazard mammer. Vil it will belie him to anticipate moes with any degree of certainty. Their face, let me once more repeat my warming, see to your instruments, and the quality before you at nout your whirl. The fourth rule is als met important. The experiment, cumul suo pol mules, be profaned in hospitali plaplu nubles dry, buffon air and excu, of light uch, is camed by the bright rays of the sun. Others amont be too much aluminal. The plots more fetal foot paint flew weak, are inmal and cold, till a dbk, fully avoided, tonkat hemasit, barely crisen. Fail all the riskrements of the different part of the work. The sages talai in the Yogadi style, that our sublance should be prepared with us. Bari astrologers say, dust it is amgad tunico d down lace of it man canal, the right place. For our work, for many things, produce wonderful effect in same places, but are quelli barren of results in others, and incest produced by desamen defunt, places this exployu the gua in linlage, that dunurant places are differently influenced, yalalja synagogue. My instance, effects a ala defurely intitudes for due reason der sap im dalal tho plain wall, and high, suited to our work, but the very worst of all possible places are those which have been defiled by lechery. D. The fifth rule is well known to the learned. There should assist a certain harmony between the celestial longer and WR work. Nothing on earth is so simple or so easily influenced as the elements of new stone, and when they are being, they obey their own proper constellations, as the needle yak, the influence of the magnet. Let this amicable conquered pre-rail. Then, in a direct und be ascendant hand, let your happy and lar-able ascendant be in fortunate aspect with his lin the whack, should be sheltered from all adverse and evil influences. If these cannel beset naexel, let them have am aspect while you prep the white tincture, let the moon be fortunate, as also the lord of the fourth house, which is the treasure of hidden things according to the old sages. The sixth house must be fashionable, for the servants parve your work from all great impediments, and see that it be not affected by the adverse constellation of your nativity. The virtue of the mover of the orb is stim formal influence. The virtue of the eighth sphere is instrumental. To it, the virtue of the planet improper and special, not that of the elenial material, and embodies the working of the other agents. The first reambles the genoms of the operator. The second is malagous to his hands. The third corresponds to his instruments. And the fourth answers to the subutance which is prepared. Let the things on earth correspond to things in heaven, and you will obtain the elixir and become a great. Mahler do not trust to geomancy, which is a supersto art, nor to all astrologers, because this science is secret, like tint of alchemy. Necromancy God forbids, and the church collars. Therefore, if you wish for success, let your hands be para from all superstitious practices. Necromancy is of the devil, and a lying art. God will bless you if you give yourself wholly to you tien lie of our own blend a in the exclu. I will speak about the regulation of the fire. Chapter 7. Would you know the perfect master? It is he who understands the regulation of the fire, and its degrees nothing will. Pence to you so formidable an impediment as ignominy of the regimen of heat add fire, for our while art may be due as beng concentratech in this one thing. Saring it is all important for the japer develop on it of our substance, that the degree of heat which bright to sear on it should be neither too gust nor too small low. Regard to this point, many learned M&Ms have gone grievously astray. 1. The degree of lycia which is employal for the scaling of pus and graisse is that which we acquire for our decoction of a merivodiat minkles, and for the pupae of covering the fachange with aurat. The degree of heat which is sufficient for dring thin linen is good for our air in 30 operations for the purpose of division. You may employ the degree of heat used by cooks in roasting meat. Ida mogre of twat with a culas fire will he and useful for the separation of the dividends, 4, but for the circulation of the quimants you will require weight heat. Luke must be maintained at an even temperature, without either increase or diminution, until the whole operation is accomplished. Moreover, there ought not to be in this fire any moisture that can be perceived by the touch, or seen with the eye. 5. There also is such a thing as a moist fire, though. The expansion sounds like a contradiction, in terms this phi shouted bust as a certain stage of the work, or middler to rea the substances which adhere to the sides of the vessel. Some degree of beets also employed to dilute tax substances. The soups declare that, in its higher degree, it causes and get even dryness, and that is effect here comidos with that of dry heat in the first degree. 6. There is also ender fire windy, is employed for the purpose of drying soul stances stomped in moisture. Sept. Another variety of fire is that of anuriution, because by its operation all things are parched effing of, which is full of danger, and only to the work, but we preparation of magnesis were the alles to do muslat, who may even ince is life by its mic effects. For this Ramson you should carefully protect your minath, ours, years and nose, as the smoke of this fire in 10-time buffel thus pusen. By neglecting this caution, many sluts have sustained considerable injuntos 9 act, nice fire ma'am. The purpose of judiciously separating kindred. 21. Elements. 1 moment of excess. 1 moment of premature démomen. May nus the labor of months that regal the 5 aright is worthy of being hailed as a great master of Fin, it is exceedingly difficult to tell the exact degree of heat which any given fine will produce. And here the sense of sight, the only reliable bednet sound or intelligible. Decrans can be given in writing. The only schoolmistress that can impart to you a thorough knowledge of this branch of our art is experience is in regard to this variety. Of hat, that Amangura says, nobody is all at MCX on NC Complified Shug. 2. The mux kind of heat is of a consuming because it is employed to smelt very hard minerals. It cannot be ton fiction powerful, even though it may occasionally be necessary to keep it up for skein length of time. 11. The next variety of heat is that of calcination, and is used for the purging of impure metals, the essential qualities of which would be impaired by smelting. 12. The kind of heat used for sublimation conics next, and by its invons, volatile minerals may be sublimed. Trees. The last variety of heat is the most important of all. It should be employed at the time of the projection of our stone, but experience is a good teacher, and I will say no more, except that he who makes a mistake at this point must begin the work over again. I have now told you all things as plainly as if I had been describing to you the way to this or that town. I have, as it were, named every county, river, bridge, and village that has to be passed, and, with this my guidebook in his hand, a judicious traveler may easily find his way. A wee and intelligent man may, by means of this book, discover the secret of our science, for the fooly and dull-witted it was not intended, and it will mod teach them anything. Our science is the height of cartly knowledge, is, to be attained by neither pope nor emperor through their rank, influence, or power, but only by virtue nod by divi grace. Our stone cannot be discovered or perfected unless it be aught with intense devotion. In the works of the Anklens, understood in the light of this my ordinal, the truth of the matter is fully set forth, the present bonk, in particular, W.W. Written for the purpose of resolving all your doubt, hate, everything is in its proper place, and nothing is wanting. Time was when I would cheerfully have paid down £1,000 for the contents of this volume, and this lust chapter I would not have missed for £300. Do not womler, masters and lens, that our science is first to duly expumule set pen to paper with the requirements of the common people in view, for just because the vulgar are not instructed in the knowledge intuite wealth, annually wased in the country, as all sages low, and many, of idlox nor daily reded to bogary study our art, the ye lord, od seru to abide in fatuous ignorance. It is hatter for you to take to this ply late than never. Let all that are benclined by the reading of the Ordinal offer up prayers for my soul, and for the living and the dead. In the year of our Lord 1477, thus book was begun. Glory be to God.